just makes you feel like a rock star.
Right?
Yeah.
I love it.
This is cool. You got to.
It's great.
Man.
Well, Steve Snyder, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, man.
I love it.
Yeah, it's something I've kind of been looking forward to talking to you about is obviously my favorite thing on the planet, which is jiu-jitsu, but obviously you come from a pretty extensive background of martial arts, and you know, I'm excited to have you here. And you know, obviously I'll kind of give you a little brief introduction. Of course, I only know the jiu-jitsu side, so maybe you can help me fill me in with kind of your kickboxing side, because I don't really know a whole lot about that. But you're a 4th degree black belt under Robson Moura. When did you first receive your blue belt, or how long have you been training for? Because I know once you receive your black belt, it's a certain amount of time before you receive your first degree, second, and third, and fourth. So 4th degree is a long time, been a black belt for many years.
14 years.
Yeah. So when did you first start training jiu-jitsu?
Man, when I said 14 years, that just tells your age. You know, you just start to say you're getting old. That's all that means.
Right.
So more stripes on your belt just means you're getting older and older.
Right.
More eggs go with it. They but starting martial arts or jiu-jitsu?
Well, I guess let's start with martial arts, because was that your first introduction to jiu-jitsu?
When I was in the military is when I first started doing martial arts. So when I was in Virginia, bounced around from karate schools, you know, walked into a karate school here, and then you get deployed, you come back, and then so you didn't get regular training, but we tried to find myself in martial arts schools, and it was an interest, you know, you wanted to learn these things. They were talking 1988, 89. And then when I got out of the military, I came back to Greensboro and started college.
And you grew up in Greensboro?
I grew up in Greensboro, yeah.
Okay.
So born and raised in Greensboro.
Okay.
But so when I came back here, actually I was living in California. My last duty station was out in California, and I tried to stay out there. Loved it.
You were in the Navy?
Yeah.
What military base were you at?
I was up in Vallejo. My last duty station was in Vallejo.
Okay.
Little LA, they called it. It's outside San Francisco.
Yeah.
Special ops base. It was at the end of the Cold War. So we were cutting back, and they decommissioned our boat. So I was on a submarine.
Okay.
So then they decommissioned it, and then found my way. I tried to stay out there in California, but couldn't. They just couldn't afford it. It was in a major recession. And I had a part-time job bouncing at a bar and trying to figure a way, pay my way through college. And my GI Bill was not going to cover it with everything out there. So found my way back to North Carolina, the UNCG. And when I came back here, I needed a job, and I needed a place to live. And so my father, he said I could live at the house for a week. He said I had a week to live. So and then you got to find your way out.
Right.
I said, all right. And he's like, you're not living here, but you're a grown boy. And I was like, yes, sir. But he did help me out, let me stay at the house for that week. And so that week I'm searching, and I went to his nightclub. They were hiring bartenders and bouncers. And so I walked in there, and the owner, a guy named Fred Corey, gave me a job. And then I asked him, I said, well, you know, I'm looking for a place to stay. And him and his brother had houses that they leased out. And so his brother rented me a house that was right near UNCG. So in one spot, I found a job and found a place to live.
That's nice.
It worked out. And, you know, you credit a lot of people back in the day when you're trying to start out. And those guys really took care of me. I mean, when I really needed to. But my first night working, there was a bouncer there, a good, really close friend of mine to this day. I asked him, you know, somebody said he did martial arts, and I asked him where he trained, and he said, come on in my school. It was a Taekwondo school over in Greensboro, and then started training there. And so it evolved. And the way that school is you look at karate today and a lot of things and what it was back then, it's not the Olympic-style Taekwondo. There was a lot of bloodshed that happened it was a lot of hardcore knocking.
Oh, I bet.
So it was a different time frame. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that you just probably wouldn't see in a gym today.
Right.
But so that evolved. so then I started while going through college, working in the bars, and then training there. Ended up going to becoming an assistant instructor and going through an apprenticeship program. And about the time I was finishing up college, I was actually looking to go to U.S. Marshals. I had my application in.
Oh, shit.
I was really trying to look for law enforcement. I wanted federal law enforcement, had a sponsor, was doing, really trying to push to that. And then one night, the owner had a location here in High Point. And he said, look, that location's not doing well. The manager's looking to do something else. And either I got one or two choices. I figured I can shut it down or I sell it to you.
Oh, wow.
So we worked out an agreement, and I said it was pretty much a 2-year plan. I wasn't sure if this is what I wanted to do, and I said, okay. So we did a 2-year agreement. I was going to work for him for 2 years, try to build this thing up, and at the 2-year mark, then I'd buy it from him. So that was me in High Point. Ended up in High Point and never left the gym at that time. But I was blessed early on. So I was doing Taekwondo with that instructor, and he invited me to go to this Japanese Jiu-Jitsu training seminar, and it was in New Orleans. So got to go down there, and that's where I met Danny Dring. And so Danny Dring was, he was doing Muay Thai. He was doing a lot of cross-training, which back in that day, you didn't cross-train.
Really?
It was, you're disloyal to your art.
Right.
You know, and this is what the things was, you got to stay in your art. So he was breaking barriers in the early stages. And it was like a moth to a light bulb. I just drew to him, and it ended up talking to him that weekend while we were there. And then he invited me out to Arkansas, and it flourished. And, you know, a lot of things from him I follow with. He said, you know, instructors don't pick students, students pick instructors. And so I just drew to him, and then he took me on a pathway that I never thought. I mean, he got me into kickboxing. He's like, well, you know, Danny Dring was a tremendously accomplished Taekwondo practitioner. Really? Fought in Russia for the Goodwill Games. Won gold medals for the U.S. on different things. Was extremely talented with it, and still practices to this day. But he was, with everything else, so he was doing all these other things, and then he said, look, you need to start doing kickboxing. And you know, you say, yes, sir. And so he got me doing that. Had no idea what I was getting into. It was just a different realm, but loved it. And then he introduced me to Joe Louis. And so Mr. Dring was very good at taking his people and then introducing them to these different guys. So his way was, I'm going to build you up, and I'm going to show you these different avenues,
so
resources.
Was Joe Louis his black belt under Joe Louis Fighting Systems, or was Joe Louis, where was he at in that time frame?
Joe was living in Wilmington.
No kidding. Okay.
He's from Knightdale.
Oh, okay.
Joe's a North Carolina native.
Gotcha. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's buried in Knightdale right now.
Wow.
Right outside Raleigh is where we buried him. And so Dring had been training with Joe quite a bit. And so traveling around and still training with Joe and doing seminars with him. And then I got to meet Joe. That was very interesting the first time. It was so much different from the traditional martial arts. Joe was not that traditional martial artist, even though he came from it.
And I've watched some of his videos. He doesn't look like he moves like your traditional martial artist. I mean, there was like someone posted it. I don't know who it was. It was one of your friends that posted it online, and it was like a 30 or 45 second, and it was going from fight to fight to fight to fight. And he was like, I think one of them was in, Chuck Norris might have been in one of those.
Yeah.
Was that him, or was it Bill Wallace? I think it was Joe Louis. What I was watching.
Joe, Chuck, and Bill all came up from the same.
Okay.
Because there were.
I mean, he moved like, dude. It was.
Big men should not move like he did.
He was so I mean, like, this guy was like throwing kicks from like out of nowhere, and I was like, holy shit! And everything had intention behind it.
People
it was really cool.
Realize the impact Joe made. Honestly, when you look at like UFC, what it is today, guys like Bill Wallace and Joe Louis, it wouldn't be. Not that it wouldn't exist,
Right.
but it wouldn't be at the level it is
Yeah.
now.
I mean, I know a lot of guys still like old school heads. You'll hear them talk, and they mention that era where they're like, "Don't ever forget where we came from."
They were blood and guts.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
sparring gear in the martial arts didn't come out to the mid '80s. It was on '86.
So it was before I was born.
Before that, those guys in class, man, it was like, they're in their karate uniforms. It's time to spar. They put in their mouthpiece and go.
Yeah,
that was it.
crazy.
There was they didn't have the padded gear, and that started coming along in the mid '80s. But the karate circuit back then was equated to what you'd consider the IBJJF is to jiu-jitsu right now.
Okay.
So it was at that level. So being a world champion in karate was the same thing as
So
being
when did it get into Olympics? Has it been in Olympics? It's been in Olympics for a while, right?
And that was Taekwondo doing that. And that was the watering down.
Okay.
And I mean,
yeah. Okay.
Anybody listening to this probably
Makes
can
sense.
criticize, but it's just, the Taekwondo, the Koreans decided they were going to try to put that in the Olympics, and not very good.
Yeah.
I know because there's a self-defense aspect to everything in martial arts in some way, and there's just not much. It's very athletic. I mean, I get it. I mean, those guys are extremely athletic to no end. But how many Olympic-style Taekwondo guys do you see fighting, start off and then end up in the cage?
Well,
None. You really don't hear about that.
Well, you have. I guess you have like Wonderboy Thompson, right? That comes
but
from
he came from Kempo.
He's Kempo though.
He's a Kempo.
Okay,
His dad was a Kempo guy.
So that's like, I think, wasn't Chuck Liddell Kempo? I think he was Kempo too. All them guys down there, I think it was Camarillo, not Dan Camarillo, but anyways, that's where they fought out of. Yeah, when they first came into the UFC.
But Joe and them
That's
were having
wild.
problems in the karate circuit with poor judging. So obviously the Asians were biased against Americans.
Sure.
This is them relating this from me hearing the stories. And so there was a time that Joe was one of the guys. He said, we just need to find out, So they started to evolve karate into full contact. And then eventually they put it into a ring. So, but the full contact was where it started. I mean, they were doing these full contact matches on ESPN. And then the kickboxing evolved in the PKA. And so, but that's where Joe was he fought the first kickboxing match in the United States. And it was, let's find out. It was a matter of fact, not a matter of opinion. It wasn't a point fight. It was to the knockout. Let's see who can do what with their skills.
Yeah, no, the videos that you see online. No, they are straight up.
And
to me, it looks like a UFC fight. I mean, literally, besides them going to the ground, I mean, it's
and the thing is Joe Louis wrestled in high school.
Really?
Bill Wallace wrestled in college.
No kidding.
And Bill Wallace was a judo black belt too. I mean, that's how he broke his knee.
Those guys
doing judo. These guys, man, they had a lot of other athletic skills outside of the karate.
Right.
And then Bill got into it. Now, Chuck, from my understanding, Chuck was part of that karate circuit. But as they went into full contact, he went into movies.
Right.
And so he was always in there. You see videos of him in the corner. They were all close friends.
Yeah.
And, but obviously, for the career, Chuck Norris made a better decision.
Right.
But, those guys all did movies at some time or another. Chuck just made a bigger career out of it, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a documentary. They were talking about, like, basically don't forget Chuck Norris, what he did for the Brazilians as well, I mean, coming into the United States. I mean, they talk about, like, his impact even in the jiu-jitsu world, where, and I don't know exactly if, what had happened. There's kind of some talk about, they kind of screwed him over a little bit, I mean, or I shouldn't say screwed him over, used him to a sense to get the name into the country. But
if you want to introduce any martial art into the United States back in the late 80s,
right,
who do you go to?
Right.
It'd be Chuck.
It'd be Chuck. Right. It would make sense.
He has the biggest face, biggest name, biggest.
Right. But it's just surprising to not see Chuck Norris in, you see him around jiu-jitsu as much as like you would probably think because of the history with him and the Gracies,
Yeah.
Because he got them into the movie scene. That's kind of how that started.
So.
That's what I've heard.
That's what I've heard too.
Yeah,
I've heard. I don't know for a fact. I mean, I've never.
There's some
never
videos on it.
I talked to his wife.
Oh, okay.
I actually talked to his wife one time on the phone.
Really?
It was a funny story that right before Joe was diagnosed with cancer, he was down at Chuck Norris's ranch, and with Bill Wallace and some other guys. They were down there for 4th of July weekend.
Where's Chuck Norris from?
He's in Texas.
He's in Texas. Okay.
Man,
Well, it makes sense.
Walker Ranger,
I
man.
know.
Come on.
You're right. That was a
But,
stupid question.
So they wwere. Chuck had invited a bunch of his friends down there, and those guys were there. And then, all of a sudden, I got a phone call. And Joe was known to do this with a lot of his guys. He did this with me a lot. He'd be on the phone, and he'd say, "Hey, Snyder, here, talk to this person." Then hand the phone over, and I have no idea who I'm talking to. But and he did that, and so it was this weekend. That one weekend, he handed it over to me, and then Gina Norris got on the phone, and she said that these guys are having an argument over Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they said you can answer it. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Your husband's the one who brought Jiu-Jitsu, helped bring it in the United States. I don't know what I'm going to do to answer it." But it was a question about somebody in the Jiu-Jitsu, and they were. But it was a simple question. It wasn't actually about jiu-jitsu. It was about somebody in the jiu-jitsu community. And and then, but it was really cool. I actually talked to Gina Norris. So
yeah, that's pretty neat.
But Joe did. And then I got to meet Linda Lee through him.
Who's that?
Bruce Lee's wife.
Bruce Lee's wife. Okay.
And what a phenomenal lady.
Really?
I mean, she was.
He's out of California. He was out of California, right?
Yeah,
See,
San Francisco.
I'm not a big.
I wasn't a big Bruce Lee guy either into the karate, but
no. But you got to pay respects to.
Joe trained with him. Joe trained with everybody, pretty much.
Really?
But he did a lot with Bruce, and he had a lot of great things to say about him.
Really?
He said, pound for pound, one of the strongest guys, and most athletic guys. And he wrote a book about his relationship and what things he learned from Bruce. They were Bruce taught him a lot, and how he was fighting power side forward and a lot of the style, a lot of things Joe took from Bruce and implemented into his fighting style. And of course, the boxing coaches that he trained with that implemented into it too. But man, we met Linda Lee. So we're at our Black Belt research conference with Joe, and I'm sitting in this conference room with Joe and this one other guy, and Linda walks in. And I mean, she is dressed to the nines. She is every bit of an elegant lady you would expect. But then you look at her and you go, this lady's a badass because she trained with her husband. I mean, she trained with him. And you're looking at her going, man, this woman probably whooped my tail in 2 seconds. But she was very, very proper person, very nice and eloquent. And it was just nice, the opportunity to meet her. But I give credit because of a lot of these people I've met was through Dring, getting me with Joe, and then I got to meet Linda, and so Dring pretty much I was like a little puppy dog with Dring, I guess. For even to this day, he says, "Hey, I want you to come with me," and I say, "Yes, sir," and we go, and then you never know what's going to happen. He's got his tentacles so much out in the martial arts; it's insane.
Yeah,
put on one of the first amateur MMA fights in the U.S.
That's crazy.
He'll tell you
Arkansas,
he can't pinpoint
right?
it. Yeah.
Arkansas, yeah.
He can't pinpoint and say exactly that he was, but it was definitely in '96 was when he put on his first amateur MMA show. And so that was really before it was pro. Those guys were all getting paid. They were fighting on TV.
Right.
So he started and he had a set of rules that he would work for amateurs depending on the number of fights they had. And that built him up. And gosh, man, the guy's got so many titles. He's Arkansas's athletic commissioner. He's
crazy.
The co-chair to the Arkansas's athletic commission.
I'm really surprised they haven't gone back and done like a UFC in Arkansas or something, like just because I don't know why. I mean, you would think because it kind of came from, well, I mean, obviously one of the first UFC fights I believe was held down there. When who was the first owner?
Well, the second was in
Bob. Who was the first owner of UFC? Bob. Dana always bashes him. I can't think of his damn name, but I'm pretty sure that was when they had their first. The first UFC fight was taking place in. I'm gonna look this up real quick because I'm pretty sure it was in first UFC.
Now, I remember when Dring held the first pro show in Arkansas.
Held in what state? I thought. I'm just curious to see. Okay, so I was wrong. November of 1993, Denver, Colorado became the first ever, well, for UFC, obviously, 1993.
And Bill Wallace was an announcer.
Yeah. That's crazy. So, how long was he an announcer for?
No, he
UFC?
just did the first one.
He just did the first one.
I don't think he was in the second.
He wasn't?
No, I know he did the first.
Yeah. And so how did you get, so Bill Wallace and Joe Louis were kind of neck and neck in business as far as
they
like
came from
that
the same,
world.
They came from the same school.
Okay.
Just at different times. So Joe was in the Marines, and he was in Okinawa and trained at a karate school out there. Then soon after, Wallace was in the Air Force, but he ended up in the same karate school, but Joe had already came back to the U.S. by that time. And they met, if I'm correct, they just met back at the States on the karate circuit.
Okay.
And so, just like in any other, I mean, obviously back then, karate wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So it was a small community. Sort of like you look at jiu-jitsu. I mean, it's a small community.
True.
I mean, considering, the broad span of martial arts, jiu-jitsu is still somewhat small.
Yeah.
But, so you just get to know everybody. So those guys, I mean, at times they became friends. I mean, just seeing each other quite often in the circuit. I'm sure that's how it developed. I don't know exactly. But, and especially coming from the same school. It's interesting. You hear a lot when learning from them, a lot of their methodologies are very similar coming from the roots, but their fighting styles are completely opposite.
Really?
But when those two together, when they were on the mat teaching, it was...
Oh, dude, yeah,
it was hilarious. No, they were constantly ragging on each other, making jokes. Yeah, I mean, but it's funny. I mean, Bill, still, he's like, if you want your nose to look ugly, and you want it all over your face and you fight like Joe. He goes, you want to look beautiful like me, then you stay on the outside and fight, And I'm like, but Bill he was an outside fighter and he did real well with it, obviously.
Yeah.
He was undefeated. And Joe was the guy that was going to crawl up in your business.
Right.
And he was a power hitter.
Yeah.
He was fast and he'd get inside. So it was just two different principles.
Did you ever get to spar with him at all?
Joe?
With Joe?
Oh, you had to for your black belt.
Oh, shit.
So we, and any of the black belts listening to this will tell you, I mean, they know, out of all the kickboxing fights I've ever done, the testing with Joe Louis would be the hardest one every single time, hands down. It was, back in the day, it was, you'd fight 3-3-minute rounds with a different black belt, and the last one was with Joe. And then Joe got to a certain age where he said that he was no longer going to spar with guys. They was just going to leave it up to his senior ranked black belts to do it. And it was not fun. There was nothing fun about standing in a ring with that man. He's big, and his knuckles are ball peen hammers. And, but when you get in a ring with him, that ring gets really small quick. And
like that.
There was nothing fun about getting hit with him.
Oh, wow.
Back in the day, when because he lived in Wilmington, he would just show up at the school randomly. So there would be days he would call, and he was known to do this with his black belts in North Carolina, so in South Carolina. If he was driving through, coming from somewhere, he would call and say, "Hey, I'm in the neighborhood.
I'm coming by.
Tell your students I'm coming in. I'm going to teach class tonight." And he'd
That's
come
cool,
in.
though.
Yeah, and I mean, and one time it was really funny. Him and I was doing a private lesson with him. Went from an hour to 3 hours. And, excuse me, And then afterwards, students showed up. Well, right before as students started showing up for class, Joe goes, let's spar. I was like, well, we got class going on, Joe. And he goes, oh, it's okay. They'll wait. And so he profusely treated me like just his whipping dog. And so, and all the students were standing on the classroom floor. And so when we first started out, you know, I thanked everybody for still training with me after watching the beating I just took. You know, I was like, guys, I appreciate you still having trust in me after watching that, you know. But it was, honestly, you stood in front of him and go, what am I going to do to you that you haven't seen? I mean, he's been there, done it all. I mean, he's been with the greats, and he was one of the greats, and it was really hard, but it was always educational because he would always take the time afterwards. He's going to sit down.
Yeah.
Getting a compliment from Joe was like winning the lottery. And just never, I got one compliment from him, you know, it was close to his death, but got a compliment, and I'll treasure it. But all the time, no matter how good you did, he was going to tell you how you could do better. And it's hard for a lot of people to see, you know, they would take that as negative.
Right.
But what Joe was always, he was real passionate about his black belts. And it was always, but knowing that with him, and you got to know him, he was always saying, you can be better. You can be better. You can be better.
Right.
So don't pride yourself on what you accomplished.
Right.
Let's go here. And man, that accomplished so much. He always, one of the things he would preach to us about was nobody cares about what you did yesterday, but all they care about is what you do today and tomorrow.
Right.
He goes, nobody cares I was a world champion.
Yeah.
He goes, all they care about is what I'm doing for you today.
Yeah. And
that's the truest story you can ever, this is the truest of things. Everybody starts to lay on their accolades. Well, I did this back in the day. I did this. What are you doing today? You know, what are we going to do tomorrow?
Right.
You know, and that's and so how are you, okay, that was what you did, but how are you going to be better tomorrow?
So where do you think the mindset came from that you became kind of attracted to these type of guys? You know what I mean? Like, you know, Joe Louis, Bill Wallace, Robson Moura, you know, high level, very intelligent people. Like, is this something that you've always kind of like really been attracted to? Like, were you instilled as a kid?
No.
You know, as like, you know,
Martial
your
arts.
friends are, you know, they always say like, you know, you can always judge somebody by the friends they hang out with. You know what I mean? And so
none of my friends growing up do martial arts.
Right.
None.
But I mean, like,
And
what I'm saying is
never,
like the mindset of these high level guys, right? Like, these are some high level people. They are not, you know, it takes a lot to get to a level like Robson Moura or Bill Wallace. Like, what attracted you to be around like these type of guys to just, you know, for your daily living and drive and growth and things like that? Like, where do you think that come from?
Because
military, your childhood, or like,
well,
you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, well,
because me as a person, I guess as an example is like, you know, rest in peace to my dad. He's no longer around. And I was told a long time ago that, you know, start getting around, you know, people that you know, are smarter than you, do things that you want to do in life, that make you better as a person, you know? So like surrounding yourself with good people. And, I guess that's kind of like where I'm going with this is
yeah,
like,
if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
right. Exactly.
You know,
that's yeah.
It's because it wasn't necessarily what they've done, because, and I go back to Dring. Dring has a lot of talent. He's a phenomenal fighter, but he breeds for you to be better.
Right.
I mean, and so much so it's, I mean, when you crawled in the ring with him as your corner man, I mean, he got you, if anybody walked in that ring, he had you motivated enough that, you know, he was going to have to pay for psychiatric help for what the people were going to witness. I mean, it was, and he's got the phrases, but he could really just drive into you. You're going to be the best that you can be right now.
Yeah.
Get rid of all the negatives,
right,
and let's go.
Yeah.
You know, no excuses. And the thing is I guess when you get with somebody that's going to push you to a level and then you see a little bit of success, then what do you want? Then you start wanting more.
You want
and
more, right?
So, and I guess, and I would presume, I mean, Mr. Drink could answer a lot better that introducing me to Joe was obviously because Joe did that for him.
Right.
So
right.
then he wants his guys to be introduced to that too as well. So
right.
he guided me to Joe. I didn't go find Joe.
Yeah.
He did. And then through that, then Bill Wallace.
Right.
And so, and then, God, man, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Mr. Dring he wasn't one of the dirty dozen, but he was, he was at least in the top 20 for getting a black belt.
Really?
It was early on. He had to go to Brazil to get his black belt.
What is he, a 6th degree?
Fifth.
He's a 5th degree?
Yeah.
Hobson's 6.
I don't know if there's any American 6 degrees right now.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't know of any.
Yeah, I have no idea.
But they would be. No, I think John Lewis got his. John Lewis was a dirty dozen. He was the first black belt for Novignal. I think he got a 6th degree recently.
Under Andre Pedneris?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's who Hobson got his black belt under, was Andre Pedneris.
Andre and Wendell run Novignal.
Right.
And that's who that was the flag we all came from.
So Carlson was his black belt, and then Maida was Carlson's black belt.
So it's a pretty tight lineage.
Yeah. I was going to say, we're not far from the tree here.
Because what it was, and I think it was 97. I don't know. I'm getting too old. That now Mr. Dring was already training in jiu-jitsu. He started training early 90s. And
that's crazy. Did he learn that? Did he meet up with people? Do you think he got it from karate or like martial arts, or is that how he found it? Or
no,
like
he'll just tell you he's an addict, like the rest of us. We're just all addicts. We're an addict. He's like
he seeked it out.
Like,
military. Where did
he started karate as a kid, and
that's
then
crazy.
He just wanted to become a better fighter.
Addicted.
And then he branched out, and I tell you, he got a lot of flack. Back in those days, him doing Muay Thai.
Yeah, Danny Drains
those guys gave him a lot, man. Those guys in the Taekwondo world gave him a lot of flack. He took it on the chin. Oh God, that's what separated me from my original Taekwondo instructor that I met in Greensboro.
Okay.
Oh, that was a big problem with me training with Dring. You don't need to be doing this. You don't need to be doing all these things.
Gotcha.
So, but anybody that's going to try to hold you back,
right,
isn't worth doing with,
right.
And so he, and that was during my time here, and Mr. Dring was way before me. So doing these things, but if I'm correct, so I don't want to get it wrong and then get yelled at on the phone later. He was training with Alan Goaz, and so Alan Goaz promoted him, I think, the blue and purple belt, and then there was a guy, Tony Emanuel, and he was originally, I know at one point he was at JSEC Jiu-Jitsu with John Lewis down there, and he's with Novignal. And so Mr. Dring brought Tony to live with him. Now, he was single at the time. He was divorced and single, so he had a house. And Tony lived with Mr. Dring and told us we're going to start doing, that it was time for us to start doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I remember looking at Mr. Dring going, do I really need to do this? The kickboxing's doing good.
Yeah.
We're doing fine on the Japanese jiu-jitsu. It's like, no, you need to do this. Oh, yes, sir. And obviously he fell in love with it immediately.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what you know. I mean, as soon as you do anything new, I mean, if you're doing jiu-jitsu and then you get into kickboxing, it's like, it's totally new.
Yeah.
You're challenging yourself. You're starting over.
That's right.
And and anything you start new is exciting.
Yeah.
And so, but God, man, it was so hard to learn back then.
Well, like martial arts has the. I mean, in general, I mean, they both have. It seems like the same, because I see the guys that come into your kickboxing programs and things like that. They're just as highly obsessed about it as the guys that come into the jiu-jitsu world. So it's almost like everybody's striving to have that goal and be better at what at their craft, right? Yeah, and it does. It's like a magic drug for me. I mean, you remember when I first walked into your gym, and this wasn't the first place I've trained. I've bounced around throughout my life, and obviously I never took it seriously. I would go here for 2 months, and then I moved to a different city. I'd go there for a month, and then 2 months here. And I didn't learn nothing. Like I literally was just there because I, for some reason, felt like I needed to be there. And then it wasn't until, when I moved out here and then walked into y'all's gym, and I haven't left, since. I've been with y'all since. And, it's like,
that's been what?
It's been a while.
6 years?
Yeah, probably going on 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're getting old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's just a testament to it though. Like, and again, it's the atmosphere, the people that you train with that, really make, I mean, I have so many friends there, you guys and the support system that's at your school. I mean, it's
a family environment.
It's it's an awesome place. And like, the people that go that I can get that do go, and I get it. I understand, you go to your first class in jiu-jitsu, which isn't that bad, but you start seeing like how kind of naked y'all are walking around earth, not knowing how to fucking defend yourself. And you're going, holy shit, this little ass dude named Kearns just like fucking evaporated me and I'm 220 pounds. It's amazing, so that in itself is like, I got to figure out what the hell's going on here, so there's always that kind of factor of like keeping me interested in like, some days I'm the nail, some days I'm the hammer, It goes back and forth. Some weeks I'm terrible. I don't even know what's going on. I can't listen. I'm not focused. And other weeks, and that's why I always tell people at the end of class, like our new white belts that come in and stuff like that. The only thing I say to them is just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. We'll see you next class, so it's not, that's it for me, it's like, cause the guys were telling me that just keep coming back. You'll figure it out. Just keep coming back. You'll figure it out, or you figure some shit out at least.
And see, for me, I'm in High Point, Mr. Drinks in Arkansas. And I can tell you, cause man, at that time there was no black belts in North Carolina. There was none.
Yeah. I was going to
So
say
there was no black belts.
Yeah.
To see a black belt was an amazing thing. So
that's
early
crazy.
on in training in jiu-jitsu, you learn techniques. So you go do a seminar, you learn a technique. You learn an arm bar, you learn a shoulder lock, you learn a choke. But then you go to roll and you couldn't make it, you couldn't get to it. So when we first started, when Mr. Drain got Tony with us, then all of a sudden we're doing movement drills. And we're doing all these movement drills. And then then all of a sudden your jiu-jitsu started to evolve. And I know that Novignel back in the day was known for their drills and the way they did things. That's why they had so many world champions. I mean, for a team back then, I mean, the names are synonymous with legends in jiu-jitsu that came out of there. I mean, it wasn't just Hobson. It was Rodrigo Feijón, Gustavo Dantas, Vitor Chalin, Leo Santos, all those guys. I mean,
Jose Aldo was one of them.
Well, he was later on.
Well,
but the early days, those guys were Charuto Verissimo. These guys were
BJ Penn, Novignel?
BJ Penn, yeah.
I was going to say, yeah.
I mean, he was an American that walked in and stayed down there.
Yeah.
I love to hit when
he lived in the gym.
When Shaolin talked about him, he said, when BJ walked into the gym, he wasn't BJ Penn. You could only imagine you're an American walking in there going, I'm going to learn your craft back in that day. He took a lot of butt whoopings right off the bat.
Oh,
and
there was
and those are all heavy guys. I mean, these guys were destroying the Brazilian Nationals and the World Championship. But we, then Tony got overstayed his visa, went back to visit Brazil. And when he tried to return, they denied him. So then he had to turn around, go back, and messed everything up. But Tony had said, he had told Mr. Dring, he said, look, I got a good friend of mine. He's come to the U.S. I want you to meet him. And it was Hobson. Now, we had heard of Hobson. You'd see VHS tapes of him. So this little man walks into Mr. Dring's gym. He's wearing a red gi, black lapel. Now, at this time, man, you're talking, man, Mr. Dring has some really, really heavy hitters, man, fighting in the cage. Really, I say the ring because there really wasn't a lot of cages back then. It was mainly rings, but it was MMA. And high level, man, these guys were, they were killers coming out of this gym. And Hobson walked in there and rolled with everybody and absolutely destroyed every person that touched him. And it was, we had never seen anything live like that. And it was mesmerizing. And then, So then Hobson ended up staying in the U.S. And so that connection, but, and through Mr. Dring and Tony, and Dring was pretty much one of the, other than John Lewis, was an earlier on Nova Nyal school in the U.S. And Gustavo was here. So we met these guys early on, them coming to the U.S. Vitor Chalin and Gustavo, Bruno Bastos. As these guys came in, we got the opportunity to know them. And so, but the one thing is, I look at like with, Mr. Dring, and then you got Joe and these guys, and Hobson. There's a lot of talented people out there in the martial arts and fighters.
Yeah.
But when they're on the mat, what are they doing? They're going to show you something. They're going to show you what they can do.
Yeah.
Or is their focus on making you better?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, like he's very passionate about when he's on the mat, making his people better.
Right.
I want to show you. I want to show you these things because I want to see you do well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that it's great. That's why a lot of seminars you go to.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, are you doing it for a picture? Or are you doing it to actually learn?
Yeah. Hobson's not that way at all.
No, and not with his people.
No.
And so if you're under
very personable
and underneath that, and Dring's the same way. And so that's why him guiding towards Hobson and guiding towards these guys, so when they're on the mat, they're all about, and what that really comes down to is you think about guys down the road, whether guys like Hobson or some of these other great guys that think along these lines, it's a legacy.
Yeah.
I mean, what is your legacy going to be? Because there's going to be a day we're not on this planet.
Yeah.
So what did you leave behind? How are people going to remember?
That's right. Yeah.
They're not going to remember you for your world championships.
No.
They'll remember you for what you did for them.
Yeah.
And so by introducing those guys, so I've always, in my school, try to follow along with that. And it just naturally happened, like with Dring, is that I'd bring guys in. I mean, I have Bill Wallace coming in next week, this month.
Yeah, I was going to say, you do that yearly, though.
My kickbox camp is an opportunity to bring those guys in.
And that's something that I was going to say. It's like you do a, I don't really like follow what other schools do, but I can only imagine that, like, I'm sure they kind of have seminars and things like that, but you really do a phenomenal job of, bringing in other people so that, because you're still learning, like you said yourself, and your game's continuing to grow as well and change. And you're a student
first.
Exactly.
I'm a student first, teacher
absolutely.
second.
Yeah, for sure.
I look at it, it's not to bring in anybody I bring into the school.
Yeah.
I'm very picky about who comes in.
That's right. Yeah.
And once again, I don't want to just bring in a big name.
Right.
I want to bring in somebody that's going to help the students.
Yeah.
And so, but if I don't, then it's almost like saying I know it all.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Right.
I really don't. And so, but if I have these resources that I've developed over these years, then I use them to inspire and assist and motivate the students to be better. So they're just resources or tools. When we do our kickboxing camp, it's an opportunity to bring in different black belts from our team and say, hey, because there's a plethora of talent just within our team itself. And so, but I want guys that are going to teach, that aren't going to show good stuff, but are going to turn around and every student that's in there comes back to class and goes, I can be better.
Right.
I can be better, man. I can do this. And if when that happens, then goal accomplished. Yeah. Because that's what I want. I want that. When I travel and I go train, I don't want to be shown another drill, another technique. I want to be inspired. I want to be inspired that I'm ready to come back to the gym. Yeah. My fire's been relit a little bit more. I'm going to train a little bit harder. Yeah. And because I'm going to work on these things. I still have something else to learn. Because
you go out to Brazil you usually go about every year or every other year or something like that. How often do you?
Man, don't remind my wife. She hasn't been yet, so that's why. She's listening. Yeah, she's going to go. I get to go. I know. I was
Yeah,
like, well,
but
you don't do jiu-jitsu anymore. And she's like, does it matter? I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, but
Well, no, because when you come back from when you came back this last time from Brazil, we were doing some crazy shit, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I forgot you just came back from Brazil.
yeah, well, it's always like you want to bring back stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. That's
It
really
is,
cool.
and
was
that
like,
trip
wow,
was
yeah,
with
this is
Hobson.
crazy.
The year before that, the year before it was really cool.
You went and saw Hobson where he grew up and all that kind of stuff, didn't you?
That trip was phenomenal.
Yeah, you told me about
Well,
that.
Terrasopolis is the birthplace of jiu-jitsu in Brazil.
Terrasopolis is right.
It's
Where's that? Right outside of São Paulo.
Outside of Rio.
Oh, Rio. Sorry. Right
And
outside of Rio.
so, man, Hobson did a hell of a job on that trip. We had something going on all the time. So, I mean, we trained at different academies, and the training experience was great. We have a really good time down there. Learned a lot. We got to play a lot, but got to see more.
How was the food? How's the food down there?
Off the chain.
It's probably so just like there's probably no shit in it at all.
No
It's
preservatives,
probably just,
nothing. The food is so good. And
man.
And the people are wonderful. I mean, everybody down there. I mean, I'm like everywhere else, they have bad people, but for the most part, I mean, everybody's really, every gym we walked into, I mean, because we were at a Carlson Gracie gym in Rio, and man, they were incredible. I mean, they're the nicest guys. I mean, they treated us like family, and they just met us. And so
that's cool.
But so it was when we were at Terrasopolis. So we got to go to Terrasopolis, and it was really interesting. We went to Hobson's birth where he grew up in the favelas. Now, as an American, you don't go in the favelas by yourself because you probably ain't going to come out.
Yeah, I've seen so many videos.
And I mean, you can, and I've been to Rio before, and you can see the favelas on the mountainside, and you see those places, and then your friends tell you don't go down this street, don't go there. And, but man, we took the van with everybody and went straight in there, and it was, surreal. You know, Hobson's told the stories about him growing up in the favela and the things that he did. But when we get out of the van, he's a rock star.
I would imagine.
Everybody came running up.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
And there was, man, a lot of his older family he hadn't seen in 20 years. And he was explaining who everybody was. But just walking through the favelas you gain a real appreciation for the work that it takes to get out of something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and to get where he is now.
Yeah.
But then the funny part was, then we come out of the favelas, we go back to the hotel, and then he takes us to a country club, and then we're hanging out at a country club that afternoon.
Oh, wow.
So we went from one extreme to the next. So then we're hanging out at a country club. They're serving us food outside. We're swimming in the pools, and we're like, this is amazing. It just from one extreme to the next, and we went toward the countryside outside of there. Even when we were in Rio, man, he took us to several places. I mean, everybody goes to the Christ statue. You go to these certain landmarks.
Yeah.
But we went to other places inside there that he just took us around and explained. I mean, it's really nice. You have somebody, I mean, this is where he grew up. Yeah. And to have that personal tour guide and better understand the culture and everything that's going on down there. But it was really a great experience. And I know he does this trip every year now. He started doing this just a couple of years ago. And then, but the year before last, I was in, and I can't pronounce half the words.
Right.
I try my Portuguese, but everybody calls it redneck Portuguese, you know. How you talking, you know? But Maceo, it's where Tony lives now. And he's, when he went back to Brazil, he ended up leaving from Rio. He ended up in Maceo, and now he's been training at Gracie Baja Gym.
Okay.
So he's a 6th degree, and he's at Gracie Baja Gym. But I haven't seen him since he left the U.S. And so, let me see. When he left, I think Devin was just born. So my son was just born. And it was, but still communicate with him on Facebook, you know, Messenger and WhatsApp, and still talk and everything every now and then and following with him. But it was really cool because I got to go back and see him. And then my son came with me, and it was right after he got his black belt. So him to go down there and actually get to meet Tony was really cool. So it was a really emotional time. I'm like, here's Tony, and he got to meet Tony. He's always heard about. He's just never known, and then trained down there.
How amazing was it to put a black belt on Devin?
It was.
That's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah, but it's also intimidating too at the same time. It was
Right.
the hardest one to do. The hardest
Oh
one.
yeah, that was.
Well,
I was pumped. I mean, that's awesome.
It was. He was the hardest every time promoting him was the hardest thing to do. I didn't want to promote him to blue belt. Hobson did it. You know, I just
The expectations.
well, it's sort of I never wanted him in his martial arts journey. I didn't want him or my daughter's journey to be mine.
Right.
You know, a lot of parents get into.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I didn't. He chose jiu-jitsu.
Right.
He did kickback. He did the martial. He did
Shout out
Taekwondo as a
Devin.
kid.
Shout out Devin Snyder. I know you're gonna be watching this, buddy. What's up, dude?
So he, I mean, I got my kids in the martial arts for the discipline aspect and the things that I know that it works for the kids. So they were going to do it. I didn't care if they ever got rank. I didn't care if they wanted that, they were going to have to want it, but they were going to do class no matter what. You're going to be in class because I'm still a big believer in the values of what it teaches. So, he was about 16, probably a little bit younger than that. And he was like, Dad, I just want to stick with jiu-jitsu. I said, all right. You know, he didn't want to do the kickboxing or anything anymore. He just said he wanted to stick with jiu-jitsu. He got his passion in wrestling, but it was his journey. So I didn't want it. I wanted to guide it. I wanted to push it and encourage it, but I didn't want it to be because of me. You know,
Right.
And so
Right.
him
I
getting
see what you're
rank,
saying.
I didn't want it to be. I didn't want his rank to be. Well, that's his dad, and I never wanted anybody to think otherwise. So you're gonna have to earn it a little bit. You're gonna have to be a little bit. You're gonna have to work a little bit more, a little bit extra, so that make sure you know that everybody knows you did it.
Yeah.
Not it. And what was really cool about it, him getting his black belt was, there was. Shaolin was at our school about 3 years before that.
Yes.
And he had grabbed me and he said, listen, because Devin had competed in his Big Apple tournament. He'd done private with Shaolin. He didn't know him as a great jiu-jitsu guy, just knew him as Shaolin because he grew up knowing him as a kid. And the same with Bruno and Hobson and those guys. And Mr. Dring, these are just jiu-jitsu guys to him.
Right.
Now, as he got older, he learned more about their history.
Right.
But it's just another guy my dad's making me do a private with.
Right.
You know, and so, but Vitor had leaned over to me and said, listen, when he gets his black belt, I want to be there. And that was a really cool thing for me to hear him say. So,
Yeah.
And then I talked to Gustavo, and he goes, I'd want to be there too, because he'd worked with Devin since a kid, and they've seen him grow up.
Yeah.
So when we did the promotion, that's why we had Hobson, Gustavo, and Shaolin there.
That was badass.
Bruno was unable to make it.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. He had promised his kids he was going to take his own kids to Brazil to compete.
Yeah.
And go see his family. And I was like, well, for me, this is a family thing happening. Everybody's got to do their family first.
That's right.
So no apologies needed here. I mean,
Right.
I understand. That's what you do. We get one shot at raising our kids. Yeah. But that was it was nice to have those guys. And then even Steve Hall from Charlotte.
Yeah.
Steve, man, and there was many times, man, I give so much props to Steve Hall. He helped me a lot. When he first came to North Carolina, and make no mind, man, we're in Novignal. So
Yeah.
nobody knew, man. When I first started teaching jiu-jitsu out of my academy, people didn't know really who Novignal was.
No.
And
When they
North
competed,
Carolina,
they competed against them though. They were the roughest, toughest at the time.
but for us in North Carolina, North Carolina breeds Hoist Gracie. I mean,
Right, yeah.
Everybody's Hoist Gracie.
Yeah.
Greg Thompson being one of his first black belts.
Yeah.
The first black belt in North Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, and man, give it up to Greg. I mean, jiu-jitsu in North Carolina is pretty much where it is because of him.
Yeah.
And what a phenomenal individual, what he's accomplished.
Yeah.
But when Steve came up to Charlotte, man, I got to meet Steve, and I would go down there and, man, I'd do privates with him. And It wasn't. Steve was really good. I mean, and I was so fortunate with his personality because he knew I was from a different team, but he was, I guess, I don't know, something with him. He felt okay to work with me. I mean, usually you're not going to go somebody a different team and then, well, let me help you out, even though you're not one of my students, you're with my team.
Right.
And so man, Steve could come up right now and spit me in the face and I'll still be his friend because I just cannot forget how he took the time. There's a lot of times, in your training, man, you're having problems and you're trying to fight through this. And I couldn't get out to see Miss Drink, but I would go down and see Steve and he would talk me through it. So it wasn't just what he would teach me. It was his mental guidance in jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And I'll never forget, I was a brown belt and it stuck with me to this day. And it made more sense later on why everybody called it the Dookie belt. The brown belt's the Dookie belt.
Right.
Why do you call the brown belt Dookie belt? Well, until you get brown belt. And it is one of the most frustrating time periods in your jiu-jitsu training. And so nothing works, but everything does. It's really, it's this weird space in your jiu-jitsu training, and it's very frustrating. And so, man, and it's almost at a point where you want to hang it up. And I know, and I was talking with Steve, and he just looked at me and said, "No, that's brown belt, man." And I went, "No shit." He goes, "Yeah, you're experiencing brown. When you get through this, was when you'll be ready for black belt." And I went, "Oh, so." And that's, when you finally get through it, then it's like things open up and make more sense. But it really is. Brown belt is a very difficult stage. It was, I think, the hardest stage in jiu-jitsu training next to being a white belt and first starting out. Oh, wow. But he had always helped Devin. At tournaments, he'd see him, he'd referee his matches and then give him words of advice. So that's why we had Steve come up for that too as well. It was really nice to have not just those guys that were influential, but the caliber of those guys all on the mat at our academy all the time. I mean, like Mr. Dring, Robson, Vitor, Gustavo, Steve Hall. I'm like, Jesus, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the history of jiu-jitsu is right here. For us, this was, man, these guys, they're all rock stars in one way or the other. And just to have them all together on one mat, it was sensory overload. And so, but it was, if you remember, you were at that camp, right?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things I thought was the funniest at that camp was listen to Vitor and Hobson go back and forth.
Yeah.
And Jim, just the camaraderie.
Yeah.
They're great friends, obviously. And listening to them, these two greats and making jokes and saying stuff about each other. And you're like, man, this is really, really cool.
Yeah.
But you get to see that other side of these guys.
Yeah.
Not just them as these athletes and what they do. Because, but you're right. These guys, to reach that level, it's a whole nother mindset of what they do.
Right.
Hobson talks about when he had no money. He was in the favelas.
Right.
And so he was driving over to Rio to train at Andre Padner's gym. And he said that there's many days, like if after training, he'd go sit. Andre had a room that he did private lessons in. And Hobson would just sit outside the room and wait for Andre to do a private and go, hey, do you need this guy to have a partner? And so he would go in there to be a partner with the guy doing the private just to get the information. And so he wasn't the guy. Now the guy's doing the private. Hobson's just in there as a training partner. But he would sit outside the room and wait just so he could go in there and get that and do that information. A lot of people don't, that's just another level mindset. And
right.
And when you're training and working, it was, and really, you think about Nick Saban in football.
Right.
Really, they're not doing the technique. They're not doing things until they get it right. They're doing it till they can't get it wrong.
Right.
And they're going to go. Vitor is probably one of the most intense training people on the mat next to Danny Drang.
Yeah, he's a pretty intense guy. I mean, the
Back in the
nicest,
day.
he's super nice dude, though, man. I mean, he gave me, I pulled him to the side when he was here, and I was like, so give me like a suggestion as a father that wants to get his kid into, some type of martial arts or jiu-jitsu. And he goes, just bring him around it. Don't show them anything. Get them to want to come. So he said, just bring them. He goes, because then he he kind of still has a little bit of like an accent, but then they may want soccer,
Well,
so it's
yeah.
like, so I mean, for me, I'm not, as a dad, I'm not pushing him as, to do anything right now. It's just more just showing him that, I just want to be a good representation of, jiu-jitsu in that aspect of grappling and wrestling and things like that. Cause I obviously didn't wrestle in high school or anything, but if I can just show him that this is what dad does, then maybe one day and he is, he's in here. Yeah, Dad, can we wrestle? Dad, I said, we'll have to do it later. I'm busy right now. So he's constantly, it's on his mind. So I see it kind of working.
Well, you think about kids. Kids are going to mirror what their parents are doing.
Yeah.
So if their parents are lazy, sitting around doing it, it's going to take somebody in their life to make them do otherwise.
Well, you see the kids in like the kickboxing classes. A lot of the parents also train kickboxing too. So they see this family dynamic, and so it's like, they obviously are following like what dad's doing. So then the kids,
Yeah, and I always make the joke, the parents, when you have your kid training, it's not child abuse. It's called sparring, So by all means, you got a problem. Hey, kid's acting up. Hey, let's go to class and let's train, let's educate you.
Yeah.
But kids they're going to mirror it because it's like working out or diet. They learn it at an early age.
Yeah.
And so if they start a good diet early age, then when they get older, they don't know any different.
Yeah, except for when I bring Easton to open mats and you guys are like shoving candy in his pocket and
because he doesn't get it at home. I mean, that's why we're going to be the cool kid.
Oh,
I'm
bullshit.
I'm going to be the cool guy. I'm going to be the cool guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to be the cool guy.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I wouldn't give it to my kids when they're little. No way. But everybody else's kids. Oh, I think I'm all about, man, I'll hand a kid a Mountain Dew before he goes home with his parents just to hear them go, what did you give my kid? But it really is, with kids, they, in the martial arts, and Shaolin made a good point, it really is, it's not necessarily what they do, it's that they do something.
Right.
And if they see you doing something and they're around you doing stuff, then they want to mirror that.
Yeah.
Because make no mind, you're your kid's favorite hero.
Right.
And they want to mirror their hero.
Yeah.
And I never wrestled, but doing jiu-jitsu, and then my son fell in love with it.
Yeah.
But growing up outside of doing the martial arts, we had him, I had him do a season of, he did a couple seasons of basketball.
Yeah.
Did the flag football, did soccer. You're going to do something. Now we'll expose you to it, but then you got into it. And heck, my daughter, she got into lacrosse, and I still can't understand that sport. They blow the whistle, and I have no idea why. I've watched it for 7 years, and I still don't know what's going on. But she loved it, and she got into lacrosse. So, but they're doing something.
Yeah.
They're doing something. They're setting goals, and they're achieving, and they're working for these goals. And whether it's a team sport or individual, which I think we'll agree that wrestling is probably one of the best in that whole thing there is. That in high school, if every kid wrestled, you probably wouldn't have kids doing stupid stuff.
I wish I would. I had an opportunity to, and my buddies were doing football, so I chose football, but there was something the whole time I wanted to wrestle. I always thought it was fascinating. Of course, my mom's brothers, they all wrestled in high school when they were, one of my uncles was like a state champ and, things like that. So it's like I was always kind of drawn to it, So I wish, I hope we can, I hope I can get Easton into wrestling. Well, I did. I tried to do a little stuff with wrestling. He loves it, but I actually I messaged a coach here recently. I won't say who it was. And it was like, I told him his age and that we had kind of tried it out. And, he kind of gave me the And I didn't say like, oh, I train jujitsu or, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? I just was like, he's like, no, you come back when he's, 7 or whatever. And I was like, whatever. Okay. So there's nothing really for like little guys like him, it's more just
No.
like development stage. We do multiple things. I told you, the baseball thing. So I'm just
They're
trying to yeah. Oh, it's all about burning this little shithead out. He's so damn wild.
It really is. You got to.
It's like burning him out.
But
It's
idle
like,
hands are gonna
exactly.
They're gonna do.
Yeah,
other
no,
things.
we
They're
keep
gonna
it
find
moving
something.
here. Yeah,
but that's
for sure.
what I'm saying for most kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But why do kids not do stuff? When I look, because that's a big part of our program as the kids, and I don't see this at the school, but I do know this exists, that parents just aren't involved with their kids. And now at our school, now at my academy, every parent's involved.
Oh yeah.
Because they're bringing their kid to an activity.
Yeah.
I mean, these parents
they're watching him.
Man, they got to get their kid. They got to yell at him, get off the screen, get in the car. We not empathize with the parents because we did it even with my kids. Let's go. Let's get to class. They get them to class. And so they're investing this into their child this time. But then unfortunately, there's a lot of kids that their parents just don't.
No, I mean, you see it in the drop-off line at my kid at Easton School. And I'm not knocking the school, but like, I see some of these parents picking up their kids and the dude gets out of the car on the phone, goes over, grabs the kid, opens the door. He's still on the phone, getting in the car, to get going on to whatever he has next. It's like, dude, you haven't been with him all day. You haven't seen him for 8 hours. And you know what I mean? Like what you're showing, you know what I mean? The time is so limited with your kid. I mean, when they go to school, they're there for 7 hours, but when they come home, they want to sit down and chill because they've been forced information all day long. And then we do an activity and he's in bed. So your time is so limited, like.
But you're their hero.
Right.
And you're taking that for granted.
Yeah, I try not to.
But
I really don't.
But like you said, the parent on the phone, is that phone call that important?
No.
What is your?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying we all fall short, right? But it just seems like it's gotten worse. Where it's like,
is it occasional or is it normal? There's a difference.
Man, I
for some of these parents, now I get it. In a family structure, parents are working and doing these things, and that's different.
Well, and in the family business is quite. But
when you have
different.
that, but when you have the opportunity, what are you doing with that opportunity at that time?
Right.
Because you blink.
Yeah.
We were talking before we got on here. Your son, you carried him in a
little carrier onto
and threw him on the mat for open mat, and now he's up running around and doing things.
Yeah.
That time goes fast.
Yeah.
We get one shot at it.
Yeah.
That's it. It is really crazy. You get one shot, and 18 comes before you know it, and then, man, they're out of the house.
Yeah. I always think that like my number one goal during the day, that's always my top goal is, and I read this in a book and I picked it up from it. It's called How to Be the Hero Dad. And it basically said that like, if there's anything you can do during the day for your son or your daughter is putting him to bed at night. It was like he goes, that's like number one thing. Like as long as you can be there every night to put him to bed, he goes, don't feel so bad that you didn't get to spend all day with him, because it's not always going to be like that,
But your kid really doesn't want to spend all day with you either.
No. But I'm saying but time is limited, so it's like if you can do one little thing,
that's it. If you're there every time,
exactly.
Right. I couldn't make either one of my kids all their sporting events.
Right.
Just life.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you're there, are you there and you engaged?
Right.
Or like you said, or are you on the phone?
Yeah.
Are you present but you're not paying attention?
Yeah.
Or are you present and involved with it? When you're present, be involved.
Yeah.
And it really is important. And for kids as they get older, because you're setting the foundation for them.
Yeah.
They need to know who's mentoring and who's guiding them. Because if you're not going to give it to them, they're going to get it somewhere.
Yeah.
And then that's when you start having the other problems.
Exactly.
So where's the guidance they're going to get?
Right.
And that's really, that's where I know at the academy we're blessed with these parents, because that's what. So, it does make it easier. But there was a time, gosh, this was back many years ago. About 20 years ago, we did a program, and it was financed through the YMCA, and we went to some of the lower income schools, and we did after twice a week. So the YMCA would pay for, or the was it YMCA? No, I can't remember who paid for it. YMCA had a program too, but we would forget where the funding came from, but it was somewhere in the city. The funding came from, and it wasn't that much. We just needed money to cover the uniforms and do these things. But we had this criteria. What they wanted was at-risk kids, but the at-risk kids would come out, and we would tell them that they had rules. They had to sign a contract. You can't get in a fight at school. You can't do these things. If you are, you're out of the program. So we held them accountable. Obviously, they get warnings. But when you go out there with these kids, you could tell they had no parental involvement with them. And they were obviously not very well disciplined. They would lash out. But after they did a couple of classes with us, they would get engaged. It was almost like they were breeding for discipline. So as soon as, you get them to start saying, yes, sir, standing up straight and do it. And they enjoyed it. And what they enjoyed was the attention they were getting and the feedback. And we would see progress with these kids, and then it was being documented. Their grades were going up. They were having better performance. And as much as you wanted to carry with that kid, we only had so many resources. We would do the next one. And that program, actually, you know what stopped that program was the ACEs in the Guilford County schools. When they brought in that ACEs program, the after-school continuing education or something, and then they cut off this after-school program. But it was a really good way. We saw a lot of great results. And so at least we tried to mentor some kids, help them out. And really, we didn't get paid for it. We just covered the expenses of the uniforms and stuff like that for them. So it wasn't that much money. But the time spent really helped to reach a lot of those kids. But it was interesting to see them going. The more you got on them for being unruly in the class. And those first couple classes, it's tough. They're mocking you. They're doing these different things. But how they would buy into it, you realize, you go, man, kids really, really want discipline in their life. Yeah. They really want it. They don't understand why, but they do. Yeah. And what it is, but I guess there's an amount of discipline we can say. What is discipline? Are you browbeating them, or are you guiding them and encouraging them?
Right.
And so,
well, when you do that, when you start to implement that, they start seeing, what the expectation is around them, and they're satisfied with what the expectation is, like shout out to Miss Snyder. Maria runs a tight ship. Oh, man, your wife runs.
She's no whole part.
She runs a damn tight. That woman is bing bong boom 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 bing. And
if a kid talks back to his parent, don't talk to your parent in front of her. She'll
tolerate
that.
Get them. Period. Oh, she's hammered Easton. And I was like, I ain't saying anything. I'm just gonna watch
you
this.
You say yes, sir, to your parent in front of her.
He's like, But they need that. Kids. I for sure, as a kid probably needed it. But hell, adults need it.
Well, that's why and mad props every adult that comes into the school. Yeah, that's.
Because his parents that are involved are learning as well. They're probably picking up stuff, I would think, right? Well, I know I am.
It's like, why do we do martial arts? Not necessarily the discipline itself. That's the skill set behind it. But why do we do it? Because there's a discipline. It's a part of our day. Yeah. We get to be disciplined, and we take that, and now what do we do with it? Now we take it out into our life. So we take this focus, discipline that we're applying into our martial arts training, and then we bring that out. And then that's what makes us a better version of ourselves. Right. And that's adults want it. Adults do. We want to be molded to be better every day. Yeah. And that's why I look forward to my training. I want to be, I want to be told, and bless his heart to this day, he knows. And I've messed up too in front of Mr. Dring, and he'll be the first to climb in my butt and let me know, and correct me, and yes, sir, and rightfully so, he'll come back and go, now, why I climbed on you in front of everybody? I'm like, yes, sir, I know, but that's why you're my coach, because I expect that. I don't expect anything else.
Right.
Because I need it too. Because I mean, we're all human. We're going to make mistakes,
Right.
and we need to be corrected to a certain level.
That's right.
And, but that's what brings us back each time, you know. Because what was it? There was a, you know, we talked about training fighters, you know, and so you hear about the martial arts, you know, and MMA is really big, you know, still, and you got the MMA schools, and that's fine. I mean, that's what people want to do, and that's and there's nothing wrong with it. I look for a different fighter in our school. I like instead of making people fighters, I want to make them grinders.
Right.
And so, if I got adult,
Hence why I started grinding stumps. No.
grinding stumps, yeah. And now shout out to Nelly grinding.
That wasn't
grinding.
That wasn't.
But you say grinders are
100%
fighters.
Yeah.
I mean, getting in the ring cage. And I mean, I did it, and my wife did it. And both my kids have. And to me, it was a level of competition.
Yeah.
You know, you went from the point karate circuit, and then, you know, doing kickboxing in the ring, and then you went and fought MMA. And so that's it's a challenge of your actual skill set.
Yeah.
But I like for 99.99% of the students that we have inside the academy, they're fighters in life.
Yeah.
And so how can I make them more of a grinder? So whatever they're doing in their life, if they have their own business, or they're a doctor, they're a lawyer, whatever it is, how can I make you take what we're doing in here and make you do that better? You know,
right.
How can you, and then also in our personal life,
right.
You know, can you focus, you know, can you take this? All right. And so what are the lessons learned?
Yeah.
What was it? Yeah. This week, our lesson this week, we talk every week, you know, we always want to have a lesson. This week's lesson was there's no tomorrow. You know, that's what we're talking about in classes. You know, the Rocky Balboa, Apollo Creed, there is no tomorrow.
Right.
So the focus this week was treat today like there wouldn't be tomorrow.
Right.
What if we did that with our relationships? Like you said, putting your child to bed.
Yeah.
Like, what if tomorrow we woke up and something life altering happened to us, and then we turn around and go, you know, I just wish I had done this.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you have the opportunity to train, so let's train. Yeah. You know, let's take advantage of it. Let's not put it aside and say, so if you can put that, you can go, okay, I'm going to take it, put this, I'm going to train today like there is no tomorrow. But then when I walk out of here, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do stuff like that like there's no tomorrow.
It sounds counterintuitive, but doing something really fucking hard during the day makes the rest of the day so much easier. I mean, when I go to jiu-jitsu and we grind and we're sweating and I'm barely breathing by the end of class and we're walking out of there and thank you, good night, see you, bye, I'm leaving. The rest of my day, I don't give the IRS could call me. I'll pick the damn phone and be like, Roger that, in a great mood. I don't even give a shit. It's like it's like this, you know, you would think like, man, I don't want to do anything hard. But doing the hard shit makes my day way better. I mean, just makes my life better, you know, because it's like if I can go in and like train jiu-jitsu with these guys that are way better than me at this and, you know, potentially, you know, getting my arm broke or, you know, obviously we're not doing that, but
that's what the techniques are designed to do.
Exactly. And you're literally
somebody.
Right. You're focusing, your whole focus is on that. It's like, man, you know, this guy's calling me about this bill or whatever. I just almost got my arm snapped off an hour ago. I'm not really worried about this right now.
Or I had this 300-pound guy laying on
top of me. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. To me, it just like, you know,
puts things in perspective.
Yeah. Like it's crazy because I utilize it and I talk a lot about this is like, you know, I always try to get in some type of form of meditation in every day. And the days that I train jiu-jitsu is a form of meditation because my mind is only focused on one thing. I'm not thinking about anything else. And some days I do though, you know, in fact, sometimes you'll be like, you all right? And I'm like, I didn't even hear a word you said because I'm thinking about something else. It doesn't happen as often as you'd think, but it does happen. But yeah, I mean, it's like a form of meditation in a way where it's like, I just get a lot of information from jiu-jitsu, not necessarily how to protect myself. I mean, from where I
Well,
started to where I am now, I mean, I
the
would,
confidence has got to be there in the
I'd be
physical skill set.
I'd be kind of worried for someone now, with what I know. But when I first started, man, and the growth I see, it's like, man, that's pretty freaking amazing, man.
Well-
because it's in all aspects of my life, not just jiu-jitsu, but like, my marriage, my son, my home, my businesses, we're growing, and like all that a lot of it comes from that,
Well, that's why in the class, it's for every adult, it's their me time.
Yeah.
And when I say the meantime, it's and this is how I always want to address the class into this manner every time, is that whatever you brought through that door was going on in your day, I want it to cease at that door.
Yeah.
So by the time at some point during this class, you're not going to be thinking about anything else but what's going on in that moment. And so you're like, God, man, when's that buzzer going to go? Or,
Right.
Man, this drill's killing me. Whatever it is, is going on, and you're breathing. And so but you're not thinking about any of the problems going on. That's relaxation.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentally relieved yourself from whatever it is. Now, when we walk back out the door, we go deal with it. But at the same idea of that focus we can put into that, then if we put that focus into our family,
Yeah.
when it's family time, or we do it when we go to work. And that's part of what the martial arts should be able to teach you, is that how do you do that? What is happening here? What is the bigger picture? That's why for me, guys being a world champion or winning the title,
Yeah.
if that's their goal, I want to make that happen. But that's not my goal for them.
Yeah.
My goal for every student is a big success is when I have a student that comes in and then goes, well, my doctor said I need to start exercising, and I'm on 1,000 different pills for my blood pressure and all this stuff. And then within a year later, they're off of every medication.
Yeah. That's saving someone's
Forget about a
life. Later.
gold medal.
Yeah.
Forget about winning a fight. You just won the fight that's going to extend your life.
Absolutely.
And
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't actually kind of didn't really like put that into context and think about that, like this is it's completely different. I mean, because you always think like, why don't we have an octagon in here and everybody's doing Muay Thai kickboxing and, these big programs and the UFC and all this kind of stuff, you know what I mean? And it's like, you're right. No, it's not really that at all. You know what I mean?
It shouldn't be.
No,
and
you're right.
And the people, and that's what.
Not to knock schools or
No,
anything like
I
that,
mean, that's
but
what I'm
just
saying.
In general, right?
Because there are people who
Everybody
want to
has
do
their-
those things. There's
right.
people out there and they want to
That's
now.
right.
And I say that I did
That's
it.
okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
And I had guys. There was a time I did. But the transformation into that. So and how can I make better versions of themselves?
Right.
But how do we? And when you hear guys like Robson and Drang and guys that have been highly successful when they've done things, they should say that martial arts should change your life.
Yeah.
So
100%.
and when people talk, actually I had a conversation with a gentleman from one of the Army New Schools from Ireland yesterday, and we were talking about ranking, and and he was like, well, you've been doing this a long time, and he's, trying to, and I do the same. I consult with others about ranking and different things, but the one thing that's going to be consistent no matter what is that, there needs to be a skill set obviously applied that when you go up to a rank. But the one thing that has to exist between each rank level, and it doesn't matter if it's jiu-jitsu, it doesn't matter if it's my kickboxing program or anything else, you need to be a different person than you were when you started at that rank. Yeah. So by the time between white and blue belt, are you different than you were when you started?
Right.
Are you better?
Yeah.
Are you better as a person? Are you better doing things? Are you better focused? So, and an easy way to look at that is, well, if you got somebody that's overweight, they start.
Yeah.
Now, but they've gained 30 pounds since then. Well, obviously, you're not striving to get better.
That's one of them.
And I mean, physical is that's a simple one. But
Right,
at the end of the day, are they doing things better for themselves?
Yeah.
So there's got to be a growth in that. So, and that's the one thing that every student should be able to look at.
Yeah.
That by the time you become, let's say where you are a purple belt, and I know, and I know this for you for fact, you're not the same person you were when you were a white belt.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the things that you've done. And
Yeah.
I mean, and those stories are, and we've got them countless with the students. They're going, you know, I was able to take my jiu-jitsu and this is what I did with it.
Yeah. There's a kid in our class, and I forgot his damn name, but he's got like 4 stripes. I remember when he first came in, we rolled it last week. He's got a shaved head, and he looks like he's lost like 30, 40 pounds or something.
Oh yeah, I know exactly who you're
Yeah.
talking about.
And so I was like, dude, like, just so you know, you look great, and your freaking jiu-jitsu's you're totally different, bro. Like he was giving me some problems, bro, and I was like, damn. Okay.
Because he's finding finding a better version of himself.
Yeah, man. He's doing great. And I was like, that's awesome. That's the way this should be.
For
man,
me,
you know?
that's the world championship.
Yeah, that's great.
Medals come and go. I mean, I used to, man, when my son was younger, he'd lose a match. I remember he was going through a phase. He was,
IBJJF,
like 14.
They gave me one. I earned one. And then they gave me a gold medal because there was no one in my division.
Yeah, I know. That's a whole nother thing.
I saw a video. I was like, I wish I could have just gave it back to him. I was like, this is stupid. I don't even know why.
Even so, I mean, even with like, but I remember Devin was going through a time period when he was a young teenager, and he was losing at tournaments. He went through this phase. And I was like, you're not seeing the big picture. I'm trying to get him to see the big picture. You're competing. You're getting better. You're just getting better. Don't focus on the loss. Focus on what you're learning. So at that time, he had a box full of medals from karate and everything else. So I went in to his room. And I said, come here. And I grabbed a gold medal from one tournament. I said, tell me about this match. He's like, I don't know. It's like, well, tell me, how did you win this? And he couldn't remember anything about it. I said, exactly. Medals come and go.
Yeah.
It's what did you get from it?
Yeah.
So it's like that gold medal. What?
Well, I did get the bronze because I earned that one.
But see, here's the thing.
The open division.
And you said the big thing.
But I was like,
you earned.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not the medal.
Yeah.
It's what went behind it.
Yeah.
It's not the belt.
Yeah.
It's what went behind it.
No, but I mean, you and the relationships you get from these people. The guy, the one match I had, I ended up choking him, but we're friends on Instagram. You know, like. It didn't even matter. It wasn't even like,
oh, it's nothing personal.
But I was going to kill him. That's what I thought in my head. You know what I mean? But now that I'm more mature in the game, I was like, that's not even what it's about, man, you know?
And honestly, when it comes into MMA, and you see a lot of these guys, and it's just, I wish they would take the martial arts name out of it. Just call it a fight league.
Yeah.
Because in the martial arts, anytime I competed or I fought against somebody and you know, Spencer, it's in the school. Spencer's, they will tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
I never had anything personal. There's nothing personal against anybody.
Yeah, you said he used to go over to.
Spencer was
You'd be
friends
like,
with
"Hey,
him beforehand."
dude, this guy's our enemy, bro." He'd be over there like talking to his opponent, hanging out,
be friends with him afterwards. But before then, we need to go do our thing. Let's get our game on.
But he's such a nice guy. I could see.
Well, it's his way of getting their head. You know,
well, that could be too. Yeah.
But the thing is that it's nothing personal. So, and I get for show. At the same time, you know, you got to build up the hype of the camaraderie of things that are going to happen. But it gets to a little extreme where I'm like, you know, this isn't the martial arts. I mean, there's got to be a thing. And let's see, Devin, when he fought, when he decided to do his MMA fights and did his first one, and I remember telling him, I was like, I don't care what happens in this fight. Afterwards, you go thank your opponent. And one of the things, especially in amateurs, thank him for showing up.
Yeah, for sure.
Be glad he showed.
Yeah.
Because the next fight that he did, one of Mr. Dring's guys was getting ready to fight. We show up for weigh-ins, and his opponent didn't show. And he has, man, this guy's been training 8 weeks. Yeah. Man, he's gone through an 8-week training camp. Yeah. He's busted his tail. He's got his family, friends here to watch him fight. Right. And that guy didn't show.
Right.
So now he's like, man, mad respect to your opponent
for
always.
Showing up, yeah.
It's not personal.
No.
I don't know anything about you or your family. No. There's nothing about that. But man, let's get in here and let's test our skills and let's get it on. We're not going to be friends for the moment because we got to do that. But afterwards, but even before then. So I do have a problem with, and I don't think it's a good thing. That's where I don't think it's a good mentorship for kids a lot of times because they say, I'm like, do we need to treat people?
But what do you think about mixed martial arts?
That's why. Well, you're mixing martial arts, but still,
right. But keeping because
Call it
there's
a fight
multiple
league.
different,
call it a fight league. But
fight league.
But if you're
right.
but if you want to put the martial arts into it, then let's put the martial arts aspect. I mean, nothing in martial arts says that you. I mean, everything in the martial arts says you got to be a good person.
A lot of shitty people in jiu-jitsu, and there's a lot of shitty people all over the place.
There's all over the place. Everything has, and I mean, well. And that also comes into the culture of the gym that you're at. I mean, and that's with any community of anything. Yeah. I mean, it's, no matter where you go. I mean, you have soccer leagues and you can have a bad soccer team because the coach, the leadership of that's going to be, you got bad wrestling clubs where there are a bunch of punks inside there. I'm sure they exist. I don't know where, but I know they do.
Sure.
And then you have your ones, but that was, it's like, I'm not a big fan of Nick Saban when he was coaching Alabama because I just don't like Alabama. But
You're an NC State guy.
Well, more LSU, but
LSU, okay.
but NC State too. But you can't denounce him as a coach. And what he talked about was, and the things that he did and how he disciplined the guys and what everything he did had a purpose about making them better. And that's why he stopped coaching because of the way things have changed in college. Mm-hmm. But he said, what I'm doing with them, it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
But everything was to make them better people. And winning championships was a byproduct.
Right.
So it was, and that's a big thing with all. So it's, and I buy into it because that's a lot what I want out of them in martial arts school. And that's why I can have somebody that's 70 years old all the way down to 7, in Sunday school. And they're all doing the same thing. Right. Everybody wants the same thing. They want to be a better version of themselves. They want to be able to see them do things that they didn't think they could do. Right. And then they want to find success elsewhere as a byproduct from what they're doing. I'm doing this, and this led me to this. As I don't think I've ever had anybody come back and go, I was really glad I quit martial arts. Yeah. I was really glad I quit. Yeah. Instead, it's the other. Everybody that stops goes, I'm like, well, get back in there. What are you doing? Right.
What's your opinion on officers that should do extracurricular training? Like, what do you think? I know we talked about this the other day, but I mean, just in general, I mean, we don't need to go like deep into the context of things of like, what do you believe? Because you do a lot of training for the tactical, for the guys over in High Point. Yeah. And you were just up in Raleigh with Tank Thompson. And Greg Thompson and all those guys.
TACP training program.
Yeah, that's badass. And so, like, what's kind of maybe what you think and what those guys up there have, kind of been saying, hey, like, this is something that really needs to be in, the pockets of our officers,
Now, for
out on the streets.
For me, there was a time when we had fighters coming out of the school, and we did that early on. And the culture for the people that were fighting got really miscued. It wasn't going to fit the culture of the school. It was guys that just wanted to fight. And coming from Mr. Dring, fighting was a test of your skill. So for me, if you wanted to fight, you had to be training for a certain amount of time period. You needed to be, if you wanted to do MMA, you had to be a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at least. You need to be training 2 years. And kickboxing, you had to be pretty much you had to be training for 2 years. So you develop a skill, and now maybe you did some jiu-jitsu tournaments, and then we're going to go to the next stage. We're going to put it in the ring or the cage, and that was my mindset for fighting. It wasn't to go be the future UFC star. Right. Actually, you have a probably better chance of getting on the NFL than you do in the UFC. Yeah. Looking at number statistics. Right. But we started getting people walking into school that I just really, we were doing background checks on people. And then, I was doing scanning licenses and trying to do background checks on students coming in. And then we're trying to weed them out, and we weren't sure. And a friend of mine that I did taekwondo with back in the early 90s, and he had gotten into jiu-jitsu training with Team Rock with Greg, and when I was training with Drang and Tony and everybody, we would get together and roll. He one day turned to me and he says, you know, you really should take your skills and start working with cops. And I said, okay. And about that time, the guy that was heading up defensive tactics for High Point, I'm talking about weeks. It was just like God's telling you one thing, and then you got to know. So
Right.
my friend said this, and he was very high up with Greensboro Police Department and highly respected, phenomenal athlete. And then JT Goodman walked in my gym and then started wanting to do kickboxing and training. And then he sat down and he said, look, will you be willing to come over and help us out and work with us? And I said, sure.
Is he that big, tall dude that's in your
He's
kickboxing?
No, he's not in kickboxing right now.
Oh, he's not. Okay. I'm thinking of a different guy then.
No, JT and I work out outside. He doesn't really, because of his work schedule, he doesn't really come to class. So he, and I had to really, he's the one that, him and then Mr. Dring. So, because Mr. Dring he's been a Pulaski County Sheriff for 30 years. And so doing defensive tactics with them.
Said that, yeah.
And he had always done it. And I, of course, consulted with him. He said, it is a better way to go. So to me, cops were the real fighters. You know, these guys are.
Yeah, man. And you have a lot. You have a lot of guys that train up there that are.
And it is rewarding for them.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I have an officer come back and go, look, man, look at this. They're doing their job better and they feel more confident. Yeah. And so there's that reward for that. But then JT got me into it and started taking me. And so I had to start learning how things are different with cops. And so everything has its environment. And you have your martial arts for sport. Then you have it for self-defense. Then you have it for sport fighting. And then there's law enforcement. And with law enforcement, and
you think more, right? But you think there needs to be more of it?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to I talk to these guys all the time, and they're just like, man, like, you know, and shout out to those guys that are training up there with us. But, you know, it's like they just don't get
fault it is.
And
I'll tell you whose fault it is.
It's the resources that they're not receiving, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's the departments.
Well,
it's the heads
they don't
up
have
need
enough
to provide
funding. They don't have, you know,
No,
it's like
it's a choice.
Is it?
No, and I'll tell you why.
God, I mean, that's
High
just
Point.
Absolutely absurd that these. I mean, I don't get it, man. I mean, it really pisses me off. I'll be honest, man.
Well,
because
they're hurting the guys.
Exactly, and that shit's just like, I don't know, man.
High Point has for over 20-something years, they require their officers to go through. They call it protective tactics or defensive tactics training twice a year, and that's command staff on down. So even the command staff is going to go through, and they're going to do this we call it in-service training, mandated twice a year. They got to go through it. So, and they're one of the only departments in the state of North Carolina that I know of. I don't know of any other department. Now, I know another one that's about to start it, and they're nearby, and they're implementing. They're getting ready. One of the guys.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, they're from the gym, and he's going to help head that up.
Yeah.
But even the Highway Patrol at one point wasn't doing that, and now they do.
Now they do.
Well,
and
between Robbie Robertson and Tank, who had that up.
Yeah.
Man, when I was up there, their
Shout out
instructor
Tank.
team. Oh man, their instructor team up there. They're all killers. I mean, these guys,
God,
their instructor team.
I saw the picture of all those guys. I was like, dude,
and that's just some
awesome.
of them, man.
That's
they have
so
a huge
awesome.
team, and everybody on their team for the Highway Patrol train in jiu-jitsu somewhere, some way around the state.
Yeah.
And so I was up there for the training. I'd get up at 5 o'clock, and then I'd go in the gym. Now they'd have their cadets in there doing stuff. But what was really interesting is that 5:30, 5:45, the instructors are getting together just to train. Nobody's making them. They're up there. Let's go work out.
Right.
So they have this mindset to constantly improve themselves, and that's who you want leading your guys into training.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a responsibility, I feel, that these departments invest in their officers.
Yes.
And if they did, and I'm sure if they went in the Highway Patrol being, the highest probably law enforcement next to the SBI inside the state, I bet if they went to those guys and looked at their use of force packets and saw how they were better implementing,
Right.
and how their officers were able to better handle and de-escalate situations through their skill set, then they would see the investment's worth it.
Yeah.
Half of these incidences that we see on TV, I firmly believe is a lack of training.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you got to think of like the stress inoculation that comes with, like, for instance, if you know that you can do something to this person, your ego is going to be in check. So you're not going to go beyond that. I mean, I'm talking kind of the opposite here, but you're not going to go beyond, what to, your ego's not going to shine out as much because you already know, like, I'm not going to listen to this guy because I already know what I can. Okay, now I know what to do. I can take him down properly without.
It's a high level of confidence.
Yeah, and so it's like, dude, come on, man. I mean, I'll pull up to some of these gas stations. These officers will get out to go inside, and I'm like, dude, no, bro. You guys are getting. You can just tell, like, you're not getting you're not getting training, dude. You're not getting training. You can just see the way they walk. I mean, it's
one of the things
pretty pathetic.
And one of the problems for officers, even if they want to do, if they want to train, their time is so limited because everybody's understaffed. I mean, back to
now we're dealing with a whole bigger problem.
It's a byproduct. I mean, this is a byproduct from anti-cop and everything else. And so now what do you get? The people don't want to go in law enforcement. And so now they don't have, now they're shorthanded.
Yeah.
And every one of these cops are working double shifts to make up, and they're trying to keep up with the crime.
Yeah.
And these guys are working. So when they get off, man, it's like, man, they want to go home and spend time with their family too.
Yeah.
And there's other things. So it's,
and I get it.
But now in High Point,
is a big thing.
I mean, that's a day that they're working when they're training.
Right.
That's where the department's got to invest.
Right.
And it would be nicer to see more departments do that, and they would see better. There's no way around it. Good training is good training, and you're going to see your officers doing their job better.
Yeah.
As a phrase that we use for people to understand is that ineffective use of force can be either seen as excessive or it becomes excessive. So when we look at that, so if an officer goes to detain or arrest somebody and they don't have a certain skill set to immediately get them under arrest, and the longer this fight goes on, so when that subject starts to resist, and now this goes longer and longer, that use of force is going to go up.
Correct.
All of a sudden, that guy grabs a weapon. We just increased it. He grabs the officer's weapon. Now we definitely increased it.
Correct.
But if that officer has the skill set to when they go to put him under arrest, they get him under arrest and it's done.
Yeah.
It's not, and so it can look like excessive. If they're over there and the longer this goes on, that officer's hitting them, they're doing whatever, and they can't get them, and they can't quickly be able to get them under arrest. To the naked eye, it looks like you're just beating this guy.
Yeah. No.
But you're just having a harder time doing it. So their ability to increase their skill set makes that look a lot less and makes it a lot more effective, and they're able to do it.
Right.
And it's not on them. I mean, that's their job. If that's their job and that's what they're required to do, then the state or that agency, somebody needs to recommend. You see what the FBI is doing, right?
No. What?
You didn't hear what the FBI is doing?
Like, there's so much shit going on right now.
The FBI reached out to the UFC
for
training with their officers to get them in shape.
Yeah, you can think
they're going to start working with the FBI to get these guys in shape and start doing stuff.
Good.
I mean, and I'm hoping, we just hear that this week that that'll help set a precedence, because it's not that officers don't want the training.
Right.
They really.
It's lack of time. It's
Well, the
department,
department's not divesting.
the department isn't investing. No, they're not.
And
I mean, hopefully,
each year,
maybe they'll have more money after Elon goes through with this.
I've been
change
blessed
song.
that for 6-7 years now, the North Carolina State School Resource Officers have association, and every year they do a week-long conference. So all the school resource officers from the state come to this one area, and they have a week-long of seminars and different things that they go through. I was invited to come and do a defensive tactics. And so it was the first time they were going to do defensive tactics. JT and I went up there in Cherokee. It was pre-COVID. And we went up there, and it was amazing the response that we got. These guys were so thrilled. They were like, we haven't done anything like this since BLET.
Wow.
And they were in there, and they were so engaged. And then we've been back again.
That's great.
And it's self-rewarding because you're like, man, you're giving these guys something. You know, you can only do so much within one day and several hours. But if they get, even if their skill set, I mean, it's hard to develop a really good skill set in a couple hours. But if you give them something that gives them more confidence to do their job, then that's it. Because they have one primary job each day they go to work, and that's to go home safe.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, that's the big thing. And make no mind, there's, people have such things about cops and they hear, but man, the whole process to go through there, not one cop wakes up and goes, I hope to really hurt somebody today.
No.
I want to kill them.
No.
And so when they have to use that use of force, then it's not like they're happy for it.
No.
And that's like, I mean, I think about it like when I bounced in the bars, I hated it when people fought and pissed me off. Man, because I had to be in class, man, college at 8:00 in the morning. And so I'm working till 3. And if somebody fought, I didn't get a bonus.
Right.
Nobody gave me a bonus for this. And I don't want to fight, man. I already did it in the gym that day. You know,
Right.
we already trained today. But tonight, I got paid the same to stand there and watch everybody as the same amount if I had to go break up a fight.
Right.
So how about this? How about I get paid just to stand here and then clean up at the end of the night? Cops are the same way. They don't get bonuses for their arrest.
Right.
Man, they'd rather go help people
Right.
out. They don't want to have to go, man, after they arrest somebody, man, then they got to go do about 1 million mounds of paperwork. That's not what they want to do.
My thing is like, if it's a money thing, how much money does it actually cost to train somebody? I mean, are you kidding me?
I don't know.
Far as okay, I get it. You bring
I don't
in
know the politics.
You
into
bring
what they
right.
do
You
with
bring in an instructor in. You get a high level guy. You get 25 people, whatever. How many people's on your department? You make them mandatory show up twice a month. It's a hour-and-a-half training seminar. They're probably not even doing that. I don't even know what they're doing. But it's like, what is the cost of grappling? It's like just jiu-jitsu in general. Like it's not like an expensive thing. I mean,
no, and they but that's where I give High Point credit. Somewhere 20-something years ago, somebody in their command said we need to invest in this.
yeah, and they
they've
do
been doing
great.
it.
They have
Well, that's why they're officers, and
Yeah.
we like to say they're undefeated in High Point for a reason. And they do a good. That's why you're not seeing them on CNN.
They're all great guys.
They're not
though,
on
too.
CNN.
They're good people. Yeah.
They're not. And the one thing is, but even with regular training, it's like, okay, you go compete at a tournament, right? What's the first thing you do when you get back? You go watch that video.
Yeah.
And you go, how can I do this better?
Right.
Nobody wants to be an armchair quarterback.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how it was. Man, in the middle of a competition, people just don't know. You feel that little strength here. Why didn't you do this? Well, I just didn't feel confident. For whatever reason, you didn't do a move is because you didn't feel confident for the way they were gripping,
Right.
the way they were standing, whatever it is. But we go back and we evaluate, and then we start going, okay, how could I do this better?
Right.
Well, I know that at the High Point Police Department, they do that regularly with their body cams, even on all their success, even on successful arrest. They're going to look and go, how can we do this better? How can we evaluate this? And then that's where they're going to look at things, and then they go, okay, we need to go back, and this is what we're going to do in training next time. We want to make officers do this better. Even though they're doing good, how can we be better?
Right.
How can we be better? And that's why I don't understand with a lot of departments.
Yeah.
And I know that's what
But I know it's
Tank's doing up there in
Yeah.
Raleigh, and Robbie Robertson and
Right.
those guys. man, when they're working with Greg Thompson and the stuff that they're doing, I mean, I can tell you this: don't resist a highway patrolman.
You're right.
Because you're going to jail. There's no way around it. If they say you're under arrest, you're going to jail. The question is, you know, are you going to come a little banged up or not? Because if you're going to fight them, that's not, they're going to put you under arrest.
Yeah, let Tank rip you out of the driver's seat, dude.
I don't want him grabbing me anyways. There's a reason why we named him Tank, you know. But that's, and you look at their troopers. But the one thing we can all say, and everybody says, when you look at troopers, their presence is commanding.
Right.
And it's confidence.
Yeah. Very professional,
They're confident with themselves. Yeah. They carry this high level of confidence.
That one guy, he was so confident, he wrote me a ticket for $1,400. He was confident as hell. Well, buddy, he was confident. And I paid that motherfucker.
Well, it's like every time I've gotten pulled, I don't like getting pulled, now it's been many, many years since I've gotten pulled and gotten a ticket, but when I do, I can't be mad at the cop.
No.
I'm like, you caught me.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
This sucks.
No.
And I know, but when it happens,
I think it's funny. I give it
my worst
more
part is,
laugh about it really now, but
and nobody gets pulled like my wife. I can tell you that. My wife, and she just, I guess that people in Alabama just drive 1,000 miles an hour everywhere they go because that's all she's ever known. But it is, and honestly, for me getting a ticket, I just don't want to hear it from my wife because I give her hell when she gets her tickets, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" But it is really, but to me, they're the real fighters right now. If there's guys out there on the street, and it'd be nice if society really started to appreciate them. You know, there was a time cops were heroes. Cops and firemen were heroes.
Well, they are. Yeah, they are.
But they were looked that way.
Yeah, on this podcast, they're heroes. So I don't
and
know
that's what I'm saying. But in society, in a large part, because of the media, they're always looking to put these guys down. But hopefully, I think the tide's turning, that they're really starting to see that, hey, these guys are really, and it is, and it needs a change. But for the most part, every one of these guys is going out and doing pretty much of a thankless job. Yeah. And that's, so, I don't care where I am. If I'm in a restaurant and there's cops sitting in there, I'm going to buy their meal. But great. I don't want to tell them.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't need the gratitude from them. I bought their meal. I don't need them to say them. And that's why I try to tell people, look, if you just go up and thank them, and it'd be amazing, if everybody just saw a cop and said, hey, thanks for being at work today. Yeah. How much better is he going to be? He or she's going to be when they walk out and they go do their next. Yeah.
I love pulling them to this. Anytime the guys are there that I train, that are officers and stuff like that, I always make it a point to kind of train with them. You know what I mean? Because it's to me, it's just like, what can I do to like help them out? You know what I mean? We're here for an hour. If I'm with them or we get partnered up or whatever, like I take it pretty serious actually, and it's like, because these guys' lives are on the line, know, and
here's the thing. They may be responding to a call that you need help on one day. You may be making that 911 call and they're the ones showing up.
Right. That's true.
And, the question is when a cop shows up, are they an asset or a liability when they show up to help you? Right. And you want these guys, you're like, hey, I can definitely say every one of the guys in our academy, I definitely would want them to show up to help me. If I'm in trouble, I want them because I know they're going to help resolve this and get it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but that's really, it'd be nice if we could see more of that, and hear more in the media, exactly what these cops go through.
I think the tides are going to shift here because it's like, when Nancy Pelosi's husband got hit with a hammer from some guy come breaking into his house in California, well, it was nice that the police showed up. It's like, not to be political, but now they want results. You know what? The reality is like, we need them here. It's like defunding. What was that about? That was the wildest thing. It was crazy.
Yeah, let's have anarchy.
That was insane. Yeah, let's just burn Portland down. Like it was just, so.
And make no mind, there's bad cops out there.
Right.
But agencies have, they have protocols for that. Yeah. They're going to correct it just like any company has a bad employee. What are they going to do? man, they can't, man, guys do something stupid,
Right.
but we're going to fix it and we're going to correct it and we're going to.
Yeah.
And,
But that is in the past. And I think now we're moving forward with that. I mean, you know,
I hope, yeah. And seeing, God, man, just to get more guys out there, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love working with, I mean, people ask, well, what do you get out of working with the High Point cops? I'm like, well, it's a little selfish in a way, because if High Point can be a safer community, then more people want to live in High Point. And if more people want to live in High Point, then my business is going to do better.
Right, exactly.
I mean, really,
Hello.
I mean, it comes back
True.
down to it. I mean, that's
100%.
it. And really, that's, man, we want a safe community.
Yeah.
And it really, and so giving back to the community in that way with those guys. And it really is. I mean, but hearing that is one of the biggest rewards working with them is when they come back and they say, you know, thanks, because something I learned or help build their confidence, help them do their job better.
Yeah.
And that's when you go, all right, you know, you feel much better about it. And it's the same way with a student, you know, any student in there that I got off I got off this heart medicine, or, you know, I overcame this health related disease.
Yeah.
And I mean, and if we're able to do if training into school does that, then to me, again, that's going to be long lasting than any medal will ever bring you. I mean, that's great. You go win a tournament, and I want people to do that. But I look at bigger pictures on people nowadays. I mean, I guess it's just over the years going from youth and then the experiences with this, that's really what most people want.
Yeah.
One of the guys that became a hero of mine in jiu-jitsu, believe it or not, is a guy that trained at Mr. Dring School. And shout out to Mr. Perry, man. I don't know how old Mr. Perry is, but I know he's over 80. And he went to Brazil with us.
Oh, wow.
And man, and he was a blue belt. And I think if I'm correct, he got his purple belt this year. But Mr. Perry trains at the gym all the time with Mr. Dring. And so he brings him to Brazil. And honestly, this old man made me mad while we were down there. I was getting tired in rolls. You know, you're rolling with all these, a bunch of black belts. You're out there and you're rolling. And Mr. Perry was staying out there. And I was like, Mr. Drink, can you tell him to take a break so I can? Because you felt bad. You know, you're a black belt and you want to take a break. You're like, come on, man. I'm like, what am I going to say? I'm too old? Mr. Perry's out here killing it. This old man's still going, you know, and smiling the whole time. And, you know, it was really nice is the academy that we were at down there, they treated him like a rock star, because he is. I mean, I said, you know, when I'm 80-something years old, that's what I want to do.
Right.
I want to be on the mat, getting it and grinding
That's
like
awesome.
him with a smile on my face
and
go, I can't wait to do this again tomorrow.
Right.
And to me, that's the beauty of what we do.
Yeah.
You know, that is really when you can
It's
get
all
somebody
walks.
to do that.
It's such all walks of life. It's crazy. It's like young, old, middle-aged, like it's
the personalities.
You don't even. And the thing is, like when you get inside there and you put the gi on, like we're all pretty much equal, because like
everybody's the same.
Nobody knows what the hell anyone really does until you get to know them, and it's like it's crazy how you're like, oh, you're a cop. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm like, okay,
You own this
would've
restaurant? I didn't know you owned this
you
restaurant.
own this restaurant? Yeah.
Oh, I
They're
didn't
just
know you
like,
do that.
oh, wow, that's wild. I would have. You don't look like it, right? Because it's almost like there's no,
and that's such a true statement that everybody is. And why are they equal? Because they have the same mission.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the same mission.
Yeah.
Is that they want, through jiu-jitsu, they want to get better. They have certain goals.
Whatever
but,
it is. Yeah.
and that's why every time we do like a graduation, I always try to remind everybody, look to your left, look to your right. That's why you are where you are. Your teammates. The only way everybody on that mat can grow and get to where they want to go is by having good teammates.
Right.
If you got a bunch of assholes on the mat, it ain't going to work.
Yeah.
You know, okay, so now some guy's out there and he's got an attitude and he wants to prove something. Well, how's that going to help you out?
Yeah.
You know, okay. But if everybody's on the same goal and the same mission,
Right.
then everybody's accomplishing it. And that's why it doesn't matter who you are or what you do outside of here.
Yeah.
We're all the same because we're all trying to do the same thing.
That's right.
And, you know, man, it gets into, and that's like, because one of the things that we do is the team gis. And I know it gets into the critical stuff into jiu-jitsu. And I'll be glad to say that, and I'm like, really? It's a piece of cloth. Is everybody going to go? And they're like, well, it's a money thing. I'm like, well, it costs money for it. But, I mean, I'm not, make no mind. And I publicly will say, I am not going to retire from selling a gi, you know.
Right.
But the overall thing on the team gis is because of what you said. Everybody's equal.
Right.
You know, and
that's a good point.
It's not about my name on the gi. It's not about Hobson's name. It's about everybody having the uniformity of the one. If Alabama football team makes sure they tuck in their shirts when they walk on the field, this level of discipline, and everybody's all on the same, it keeps everybody on the same page, that they're on one mission. You don't walk on the Alabama football practice squad wearing an LSU jersey. Because you like purple. Yeah. So, but in doing that, it is a reminder, and there is that professionalism that goes with that.
That's a good point, because a lot of people question that, and I questioned that until I am on a job site, and I've got Tom, Dick, and Harry wearing all different types of clothes, and I'm like, man, that doesn't look. I mean, just on a professional level, I'm like, I don't like that.
But I will say this:
I don't like
when
that.
your guys came out to work for us.
But now we obviously everybody wears. You know where you're at. You know who's.
You're
gnarly
part
by
of
nature's
this team.
here.
You're part of the gnarly team right now. Yeah. You guys would be working together,
right? And see, I was like, who gives a fuck if why does it even matter? Why does it? But it makes sense. Totally makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
But everybody, and it really, oh God, it kills me. It kills me. Guys, I like this certain type of gi.
Well, I've been one of those guys.
Well, no, but they get so vested in it. And I'm like, and I mean, they're like, I'm like, honestly, when we first started doing jiu-jitsu, there weren't all these brands of jiu-jitsu gis. Atama was about the only Brazilian, and you had, and it was hard to get an account with Atama. It was really hard. So, if you talk to Tank, Levi, and some of these guys that have been around a long time, 20 years, the first gis they got were judo gis. That's what we wore when we first started. Man, you got a judo gi.
The little super thin.
No. Man, the thick collar, these thick gis. They were big and baggy. That's a judo gi, man. We wore judo gis. Nobody cared. No. You put on the gi, let's go. Yeah. And so then they come up with these different brands and these different things. And I get that everybody wants to be an individual to some point. But I'm like, be an individual through your performance and who you are, not through the clothes you wear.
Right.
But
you've adapted too. Like when I first came in, this is the, you had to wear the rash guard, this is just,
that's a health thing.
But now, what I'm saying is we used to have to wear, you've lightened up over the rash guard stuff. Cause remember it used to be
no gi.
Right.
Now, you know why that was?
No gi's different.
No, you have to wear a team rash guard. No.
Yeah.
Under the gi, it never was.
Because I was like,
no.
Oh, shit. We can just wear, okay, I'm just going to wear.
Under the gi.
I'm wearing whatever rash guard.
Now, under the gi, no, because I never wear a rash guard. I wear a compression shirt underneath the gi. It was never about wearing a team. It was, I always wanted guys to wear.
At least that's what I thought. Maybe.
Yeah, because I was always.
Everybody's wearing a team one?
Guys just happen to do it. But, but my thing about wearing the rash guard underneath it, and honestly, this was always me, was, man, you get guys with these big hairy chests.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly.
Right in your face,
what is it
grinding.
when Harry met Sally or something and he's playing basketball and the big hairy chest?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, and so there's a sanitary thing to that. And then, no, but for no-gi, what it was is I was having everybody wear, for a time period, was wearing team rash guards. And the reason was, there were several reasons. One was people were coming in wearing stuff that was offensive. And I'm like, why have I got to tell adults not to wear that? So they're wearing stuff that was extremely explicit or man, it's like, you shouldn't be wearing that, you know, especially
Right.
around there are kids in there.
Right.
Or offensive to some other people.
Fair enough.
And then, no, and then guys were wearing cutoff sleeves. And I went, nobody wants your armpit hair in the back of their neck when you're trying to do a guillotine.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in a higher level
Fair
doing
enough.
that, but for as recreational, no, but, so when I got away from that and I sort of I had to sort of like hammer down early and then I let it loosen up just as long as nobody's wearing something offensive.
Yeah.
And we got sleeves on.
Yeah.
You got short sleeves, something, because it's just nasty.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
And I mean, nobody, and man, we got females in there.
Right.
Man, I know female wants.
No.
If I don't want your sweaty armpit on the back of my neck dripping down, I know some girl doesn't want it either.
No.
You know? And so, but the uniform, it's not about, that's why, man, I make sure they're affordable, but it's that uniformity and it looks different. And when you come in, it is like when you come in as a team, then everybody's on the same page. Right. And I make no mind, and that's okay with me. I've had guys call up, you know, and they've asked me about the academy, and they go, "Well, you got to have a team gi." Well, then I'm not doing that. I'm like, well, then this isn't the place for you, because if you're going to be that way, then when I tell you no heel hooks for white belts, then how do I know you're not going to do that? Because I have a responsibility to every student on there, that everybody's on the same page. Because everybody's got to go to work tomorrow.
But we're not trying to get,
everybody's got to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, they've got other things they're doing. And so it's like, there's already enough injury within our training that there is. So if you can't, I mean, and that's why I said it's not about the certain uniform, but you hear these guys, and I love the criticism on them because some of these young schools, and they're, you know, and they're criticizing it. They're like, oh, well, they make them wear it. I'm like, yeah. But don't worry, you'll figure it out one day too. Yeah. Because
it makes sense. It definitely makes sense.
In time,
but the thing is, it's like you always have variety too. It's not like you have tons of, you're always coming out with like new gis and you're always doing.
I know that we do
stuff.
What we do every spring. We do the spring gi for $89.
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's nothing. Yeah.
I mean,
we're
not charging.
I always end up buying.
I don't charge $200 for gis.
Yeah, no.
I mean, some people do, but people are like, oh, it's just racket. I'm like, you don't get the big picture.
Right.
And you know what's funny about jiu-jitsu is in my martial arts program, nobody has ever said anything about wearing a team jersey or the team uniform. And never.
What, in kickboxing?
Yeah, or my kids' martial arts program.
That's because
30 years, nobody's ever thinking.
That's because nobody wants to get roundhouse kicked by Maria.
No. but the thing is nobody's ever said it. It was just part of the martial arts.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But jiu-jitsu gets in there, and then they're like, well, I saw this really cool gi on there.
Yeah.
Now the Raskar thing, I just, whatever's underneath. But yeah, and so it's funny. But there's so many of these jiu-jitsu schools popping up. But you'll see, but if you look, all the big teams are all doing the same thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I know they say Gracie Baja, but forget Gracie Baja Alliance. There's a lot of these other gyms.
They all have it.
Hobson does it.
Yeah. Hobson, yep.
And
they
I know,
all do.
and so they're all saying, why? Because it changes the culture in the gym. And honestly, it eliminates people that you don't want.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it make me mind. I mean, it's better to eliminate somebody from coming in to tarnish the culture and the environment.
Yeah.
It's just not worth the money. You
No.
can't pay me enough to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why I've told guys, here's your walking papers. You need to go. We're going to cancel your contract for you.
Yeah.
You need to go. You just don't fit in here.
Yeah.
We don't want you here. And this isn't it. And then they go over somewhere else, and that's fine with me. But you're not here.
Right.
And because I don't want to tarnish what we've taken. God, man, we're what, 24 years now teaching jiu-jitsu in the area. 2001 was about when I started teaching. So, I mean, it takes a long time and come a long way. And the guys that you're on the mat, everybody knows when you walk in there. Yeah. Everybody's on the same page. That's why you say we're all equal.
Yeah.
Everybody is.
Yeah.
rank differentiates certain skill sets and different things that are accomplished, but at the same day, we're all on the same team doing the same thing at this moment in time, and that's where we want to go. And that's more of where I think, but when, and any other real big team is doing that anyways.
Yeah.
Let guys go compete. I really don't care. You want to go compete, you want to go do that. I mean, you have your favorite competition gi, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Right.
Because when you're competing, you have that. Everybody, all competitors have a certain uniform. I'm not going to say, well, you need, I'm not going to do that. I don't. That's not my concern at that point. I want guys to focus more on their performance and competition.
Yeah.
I'd rather them just not go out there and act like an asshole.
Yeah.
And that's where you see that.
Yeah, but
too.
I mean, like when I first started training with you, I was a little intimidated walking up in your school. You know, I was like, damn, like
that's
this is
everybody.
You know, but then you get to know you, and you get to, you know, you grow with the person. You know, you become kind of like family essentially, and it's like, you know, whereas like day one when I showed up to your school, I would have never thought you'd be sitting across from me us having this kind of a conversation, right? It was like, you know what I mean? Because it was really about respect. It was like I had a high level of respect, and I still do, of course. But it was like, you know, I didn't have the level of confidence that I have today, right?
Well, look what you've done since you started.
Right. We go hard.
I'm
hard.
talking about outside.
Oh yeah.
Look
we
what
go
you've
hard.
accomplished outside.
Fuck yeah. But I mean, it's cool to see that. You know what I mean? It's like
7 years ago, gnarly didn't exist.
No,
you know,
no.
and that's a big thing. I mean, look at what you've done with the things you've done in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. But
that's grinding. You're grinding. Yeah. Then you said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You stopped what you did one day and said, I'm going to quit this job and I'm just going to open this business.
Yeah, that was the scariest day ever for sure. Yeah.
But you had the confidence to do it.
Yeah, I did.
And then you had 100%. The will to make it successful.
Yeah.
Because you knew consistency and grinding does that. And really, when you come back to class, it's just a reminder. You know, it just reminds you how you do what you do. And but the biggest test for everybody is coming into class the first time. That's with anything. Yeah. Man, you're walking into an environment. You don't know anybody. You don't know the protocols. That's why I say for everybody, that's why when we talk about graduations and doing stuff, I'm like, man, the biggest test that everybody, the first hardest test that you do is coming into the academy and starting. Yeah. That is the biggest test. Yeah. Now, every test that comes in, the real test that comes in every single day for people is that choice to come to class.
Right.
And there's a lot of other things that are telling us not to come to class. There's a lot of other things. Hey, you need to do this. You can do this. So that is a test in itself. So that's why I try to remind people, if you show up for class, you pass the test. That's the biggest test. Yeah. Everything else just fall into place. Right. Show up. Right. Just show up. And we've talked about that, you know, in class. You brought it up too. I know you've talked about it. The secret to success is just keep showing up. Yeah. Good days, bad days, every day. You know,
because the original reason I showed up to y'all school was, I was like wanting to have something that was consistent year round to train for hunting season, and it was like just going to the gym. You started and lifting. To help your hunting? Yeah, that's really how all that kind of came about. Cool. Is because I was like, well, I need to be like consistent with something to like force me to be consistent. You know what I mean? So because going after these mature bucks and hunting them and stuff like that, like it takes, you know.
Well, I know when you do your big trips, you come in and you start training harder, like you're getting ready for a competition.
Yeah, I do.
Because you got your big hikes.
I ramp everything back up. Yeah, because like, you know, trying to hike at elevation and things like that, and it absolutely helps. And that was kind of the reason why. You know what I mean? And then when I got there and then Taylor was pregnant, and then I was like, oh wow, I probably need to know how to, like, you know what I mean, really know how to defend myself if something happens, you know what I mean? Because when I just kind of forgot, like the first time I went to jiu-jitsu years ago before this, like what I really don't know, you know? And so I was like, wow, like I'm kind of getting two with this, you know what I mean? Then I'm getting an ego check. Now I'm meditating in a way, and now look at what it's doing for my life today. You know, the hard work and the consistency and the determination and the will, you know, to continue to keep doing it. Because if I'm not training at jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean, I'm doing other things training, you know what I mean? It goes in like all aspects of my life. I might be, you know, learning about, you know, something I don't know about. So now I'm into watching this podcast and learning about this other thing. You know, I've been
finding new things to get into.
Yeah, I'm always into. I'm a Renaissance guy. I am like now I'm ramping up on chickens. I don't know. I've been like watching chicken videos and like we're getting ready to do some chickens this year. So I don't know. It's just my biggest thing is, I guess what I'm saying is I'm just a huge advocate for jiu-jitsu and
new things too.
Yeah.
Well, what was it? I've gotten big into doing these motorcycle racing.
Yeah.
And so, but it was always ridden motorcycles.
And
always,
see, now that you race, you don't get speeding tickets.
Well,
so see,
no, but what it was really interesting.
Where do you do that at?
Well, they call it track days. You're not really,
right,
racing, but you're running. I mean, you're running with guys, and it is a huge skill on controlling this thing on the track, you know. And so,
sure, dangerous.
But it's its own. They have their own group. I mean, it's a group of guys, and it was Laszlo.
Yeah,
you know and you know he knew I rode. And we got to talking about motorcycles, and he said, "Look, he had stopped. He had done track days for a while, and going out and doing the races, and he said he got back into it, and he said, "Man, you ought to really do this." I was like, man, that sounds pretty cool. And so he's pretty much, it's like the student becomes the coach. So he's guided me in this. And I said, all right. So I went to this race school. And I remember the first race school I did years ago. And I listened to this instructor talking. And so he's talking. So you go into a class, they start telling you about this skill, and you're going through these different things. Then you get out on track. And then you're out there running. All the bikes are running. You're assigned a coach, and the coach is with you. Then he'll come off, and then he'll tell you what he saw and what he did, and then you'll go back and you'll get another skill. But I'm listening to these guys, and so by the end of near the afternoon, I grabbed my instructor. I'm like, "Did you train martial arts?" He goes, "No, why?" And I said, "Because you sound exactly like I talk about in my class. You're saying the same things over, and it's crazy. It really is. But what was really cool about it, for me, was I was a white belt. I mean, I've ridden motorcycles. I mean, over 30 years ridden these things, you know, sport bikes, cruisers, whatever. And now it's like, wait a minute, you know absolutely nothing about this machine. You really don't know how to control this, and trying to build this skill set. And still, I'd probably say, I'm in the intermediate group, which would probably be blue belt in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Laszlo's much higher. I mean, he's that guy that he's had this a big epiphany on it. And so, man, the guy's just destroying the track. I mean, he's actually on a smaller bike than I am at times, and he's blown the paint off my bike. But it's just all the little details, and it's like constantly trying to learn it. But what I've done from the racing is in how in doing these skills, I want it to make me a better instructor. And so I take these things, and that's why. So my wife has asked me, well, I don't understand. I said, well, if it's helping me be better inside the gym. And so these things, it's like vision is a big thing on the racetrack, you know. And one of the big epiphanies that I had was focused vision. So when you're driving at 160 miles an hour, you're coming into a turn, and you're not acclimated to that speed, your vision is very narrow. So the first thing the coach is always doing, he's in front of you, he's giving these signals to open your vision, because you get very narrow-minded, and you are narrow-focused. And when you're narrow-focused, everything seems like it's coming at you 10 times faster. But when you open up your vision, and your vision gets broader, it seems slower. Well, the epiphany came to me. That's a brand new white belt in class.
Right.
That's why they overreact. That's why they're not spastic, because they're scared. They're under adrenaline stress, and their vision. And so as this opponent is reaching and grabbing for them, even when they're going slow, it seems 10 times faster, and they're freaking out. So the skills that I'm using to fix my vision on the racetrack and how I'm acclimating to that makes me a better instructor for that new white belt. And I can say, look, I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing to help control my vision and get better broad perspective and control this machine. But if you do this and you're trying to breathe, try to look around a little bit. Don't get now that can help them grow better.
Yeah.
So that's just one, but many skills. And now I'm doing the skydiving thing because I want to get certified as a skydiver.
Yeah.
But there's a whole nother skill set in that. But it's the same, but the concept's still the same. You know, there still are.
Skydiving.
But, I mean, they're extreme.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm only having people on here that do gnarly shit. So
Yeah, well,
You're one of
but I want to get my I want to get my Class A certification. So
I'll stick
I started
to
with it
chickens.
last year. I started last year, but it is
Didn't you take Hobson a couple times?
Yeah, I took him skydiving for the first time.
That's hilarious.
And honestly,
Did he have a blast?
the funny story is, so I planned on doing this. I was like, okay, we're going to do a tandem skydive. So I purchased this skydive down Salisbury. And I said, because he'll usually show up in shorts and flip-flops. And I was like, look, I need you to wear jeans and shoes because I got a surprise for you. We're going to do something really cool. And he was like, what? And I said, it wouldn't be a surprise if I told you. So that Thursday night, he flies in. I get him at the airport, and the first thing he tells me, he goes, this doesn't have anything to do with heights, does it? Because I'm scared of heights. So, no, don't worry. It has nothing to do with that. Oh. So the next morning we get up, we drive down there. He's like, what are we doing? It's like, you'll see, man. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a great time. And he doesn't realize it till we start walking up the gravel lot, and then we get to the drop zone. And he goes, oh, hell no. I'm like, too late. You're signed up. We're doing it. So he's sitting there filling out the paperwork, and he's sweating. He's like, man, we got to hurry up and go. But I'm sweating, too. I'm like, man, we're going to jump out of this damn plane. Oh, shit. We're going to, I think it was 13,000 feet. And so we hook up with the tandem guys, and we get up there, and you finally jump out. And then afterwards, you're like, it's such an adrenaline rush. And you land, and you're like, oh, hell yeah. So he was glad he did it, afterwards. And then the next year he came, I got him to do it again.
That's
cool. So now he's like, man, I think I want to get my certification. I'm like, that's what I'm working on. So it's like, but it's addressing fears. And to be honest with you, it's like, there is no tomorrow. Don't go back and say, hey, I wish I did this.
Yeah.
And that's why I told him, I was like, man, now you can say you did it. Whether you did it, you never did it again, you can say, he's a highly accomplished guy in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And I know he's about life experiences, and he's traveling with his kids, and bless him for doing that. That's what he wants to do. And he's doing these great things. I'm like, dude, go tell your buddies you jumped out of an airplane at 13,000 feet. And then, but then he calls everybody up. So now all our guests come in, they're like, look, dude, I'm not jumping out of an airplane. I'm like, I'm not taking you there. I'm like, what if you don't have anything planned for me? I'm like, no, we're going to do jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I'm like, quit calling everybody and tell them I'm going to do crazy stuff with them. But it's like, just say, why not? Yeah. Just do it. And that's what you did with your business.
I'm not going skydiving. Don't even try to convince me. I ain't doing that.
You will one day.
Maybe not.
But doing extreme things. Hell, you go hunting, man. Out there bears are coming out where you're going. Well, and that's what I say about that, man. I'm like, bless you guys for hunting. I don't want to go get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go walk through the woods.
Oh, it's so cool.
But I will definitely eat every bit of everybody's prize from their hard work. But I don't want to go walk out in the woods. That's just not entertaining for me. And Mr. Drain's a big hunter. And my wife's Taekwondo instructor is a big hunter. And I'm all about
when he comes down, we'll see if maybe you guys got some time. I'll get him on the podcast and talk to him. I'd like to talk to him.
He's really good. But being around the martial arts and early on with the jiu-jitsu, the early names of who's who and what's what. When he's done several privates with Hickson recently. And so he's been. I just saw
a picture of him. Yeah.
But he'll tell you one of his earlier seminars with the Gracies. Hoist was a kid.
No way.
He says Hoist was just on the side.
That's wild.
He was teenager or something along the lines. One of his earlier seminars. I'm like, holy smokes! And so, but guys that have been around a long time, the evolution of where things came from. Yeah. Because jiu-jitsu, nobody. And even still today, the UFC did its job. Yeah. And it brought it up. But, I mean, but really now, what's the big thing I think for UFC now is wrestling.
Oh, well, yeah. Look at all the champions right now.
Well, yeah.
Most of them are wrestlers.
I mean, the wrestlers. I mean, really, when these collegiate wrestlers are coming out of,
when you grow up in Dagestan, Russia, I mean, they're from a 2-year-old. I mean, Khabib talks about it. Habib Nurmagomedov says that, in his house, his dad always said, we train. That's what we do. We train.
I mean,
there was no option. They didn't give him options. It was we train, and they trained. So, from 2 to champion, I mean, they, you've seen the videos of them, like their version of basketball.
No.
Oh yeah, it's like wrestling basketball. It's wild.
Yeah,
they're insane.
See,
like,
and that's when you guys are just always taking stuff to the next extreme level, which is really cool to do. Yeah. And but it is in your craft, whatever it is. What is the next thing you're going to do with it? You've accomplished this. All right, what's next? What can you do next? And really, complacency is what kills us all.
Yeah.
Once we sit back, man,
stay busy.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got to. If you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're not learning something new every day, you got to challenge yourself.
That's right.
I mean, what was it? Who was it? 50 Cent. He said something along the lines that, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Because in the meantime, I got stuff to do. Yeah. And that's why he's so successful. And he owns several different companies. Yeah. Because, man, I'm alive. As long as I'm breathing, what am I going to do next? Okay. And that's all successful guys. Yeah. They're always looking for that next thing. They're not going to sit back.
No.
So mirror that.
Right.
Following success. That's why. That's why you want to be in that room with those guys all the time.
Right.
I don't need to be a world champion, but I'm going to be on the mat with them.
Right.
I want them in that room. I want guys that have bred world champions. I want guys that have done these things because, guys don't have to be a pro fighter. They don't have to be high level world champion, but it doesn't mean you can't train like that. Doesn't mean that you can develop the mindset like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that may not be your goal to
right.
live day in, day out in the gym and jiu-jitsu to go win the worlds.
Yeah.
But if you can develop the mindset they had to get to that level of success and you put that into your jiu-jitsu, then what else are you going to do outside? Then that mindset's only going to transfer over with everything else we do. So it is a big thing for them. But this is a really cool thing you're doing. I love these podcast things. Man.
Yeah, it's fun, dude.
It's my first one.
Yeah, well.
I'm not a virgin anymore.
No, you're not.
I'm not a virgin anymore.
Well, look, man, we'll wrap it up. But, man, I just want to say thank you so much for, all the things that you do for me,
I really
man.
appreciate it.
You're one of the mentors in my life that I look to. Appreciate you, helping our community. It's a great honor to know you, and I look forward to see what the future holds for you and
we
myself.
got some good. I told you we got some good things coming up.
Yeah,
we got some big things happening. in High Point. It's going to happen soon.
Well, when happens,
we make that announcement, man, we'll tell everybody.
We'll have you back on here to
talk about the next thing that we're going to do.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. So,
we appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, dude. So we'll cut it off until next time. We will catch you all on the next one. Later.